Hello and welcome to the new mentor session covering the Empire and Woodelves. Going to be going over both entire rosters today, and then next week we'll be doing replays and such on the two. Joining me here is Lycus. Fine, don't say anything then. Leave me here. Why are you even here? It's always just me. I have to cover it all.
Nobody will believe you.
You don't even... Do you play with these factions ever? I don't think I've ever seen you play Empire or Woodelves.
I play a bit of Woodelves, but like only basically the scraps.
Oh good, just the little bits.
I just don't like Empire that much.
I like Empire, so I should be alright with this. Well, we may as well start with the Empire, seeing them on them. With the Lords, I guess. Just starting right off the bat. General of the Empire. Anything notable to say?
Don't ever take him.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, don't ever take him. He's just a worse version of two better options in Boris Todbringer or Karl Franz. You'd be much better off in... I don't think there's any circumstance you want the basic General of the Empire over the other two. We'll get on to why they're better later, but this guy is just not usually worth it. His abilities are very standard, and his item is not as good as it looks. And he, stats-wise, is just worse than both of them. He gets the same mount options, but he's just worse overall. The Huntsman General. Very niche, very niche pick. Probably one of the nichest picks of the Empire Lords, I'd say. I think there's a matchup that he's good in, like, somewhere, probably. I can't think of it on the top of my head. Maybe Woodelves? He could be good against Woodelves. Maybe against Vampire Coast. He's just a very cheap sort of ranged option lord. Like you can really get him down to like 750 quite easily. His items aren't all too good, but some of his abilities, like giving fire damage to all allies in range, is pretty good. At plus 30 reload skill as well. I could see him maybe being good against Vampire Coast. What are your thoughts?
I always heard that he was good if you go for like a fire heavy build, so maybe Woodelves because of the fire weakness.
Yeah, with the fire weakness.
Units, like this. He also has that flask, isn't it, that imbues fire weakness to a unit?
Yeah,
so
fire's weakness and reduces speed.
But it's like I would say it's a lot of micro. Get the oil flask off, then
And then
get
hail
like,
of fire.
maybe a spell from the White Wizard, and then actually like shoot at something. So
yeah, it is a lot of micro, but if you pull it off, you can get a lot of fire resistances down, and then you just hit him with the fire attacks. So yeah, against like I'd say Coast and Wood Elves are the two opportunities for him to be good. Everything else, he's not particularly suited for the role. A good all-rounder is Boris Todbringer. I'd say you can pretty much bring him in nearly any matchup. He's just a solid lord that you can give regeneration to with his item. You're almost always bringing him just for this item, the Midland Runefang, because that kind of regeneration is really good, especially when you start putting him on a big mount like a Imperial Griffin, because it means he's going to be able to regenerate a lot of health. His abilities, I think they're pretty good, especially like this one only affects creatures when their leadership is below 50%. But when you have like the fear and terror causing of the Griffin, it can usually stack up that you can get it down there quite quick, and then it's -5 melee defense and attack really easily to everything around you. So overall, he's pretty good. Regeneration is the main reason for it, to be honest. If he didn't have the regeneration, he'd be about the same level as the General of the Empire. So whenever you're bringing him, you want him to bring the regeneration as well.
he allows you to like pick something like another law than Law of Life, doesn't he? Like
yeah, because of that regeneration access. It's the same thing with Volkmar, who also gets regeneration. He means you can bring them without having to bring Law of Life, because they'll already hit their healing cap on their own. Because so often you'll be so tempted to bring Law of Life if you don't bring a general who can regenerate, because it's free healing. Or he's already a caster, so this gives you this is the main opportunity to bring a different law, more or less. The Archlector is just the smaller version of Volkmar the Grim, and vice versa is Volkmar just a bigger version of this one. I don't think he gets anything too notable. Of course, he has the prayers, which are the access to the Warrior Priest, Archlector, and Volkmar the Grim. All the prayers are pretty solid, I'd say. The ones I usually drop are like Divine Power, Benediction, and sometimes I'll drop Grand Shield of Faith. Like, it depends on what I'm sort of fighting. If I'm fighting something without a lot of chaff, I'll also drop Grand Soulfire. It's really just sort of what you're looking for in sort of a situation. But a general rule for the Archlector, the Volkmar the Grim, and the Warrior Priest is you usually want to stick them in a very dense area of allies that you can buff up, because they're pretty good buffs, like 24 melee attack, 22 damage resistance, and then you can clear any chaff away really easily with Soulfire. So it's a very good goon squadding, I suppose is the term that you'd use. Just to mash up as much as your strong units together and then buff them all up. He gets fire. He can get fire damage as well, but so can Volkmar if you put him on anything. So, but it's quite a sizable increase to weapon damage as well with this item. So he could be good against like lightly armored regeneration lords, like in the Vampire Coast as well. You can only put him on a horse though, so he's not got any kind of griffin or flying options. But he's overall pretty good, I'd say. But the problem is that you can usually just bring a warrior priest to fulfill the exact same role, I'm pretty sure. Or does he have the upgraded version? So he does get the upgraded version, same as Volkmar, does he?
Yeah, he gets better versions.
Is it the same versions as Volkmar? Yeah, it looks like it. I assume Volkmar got even more powerful ones. But no, it looks like he gets the same tier of spells.
Volkmar has his items and
yeah,
and
the chariot.
I also think Volkmar doesn't get benediction and the magic. No, he gets magic thing. I think Volkmar has a better magic miscast chance.
Better divine power. Let's have a quick look. No, it looks like it's the same all around.
You're still at the arch. Oh no, you're still at Volkmar. Okay. So let's switch. And you also get benediction. I didn't know that. Yeah,
it's usually the one I take off, more or less, because he already provides, the encourage, so you don't really need any more leadership. But yeah, Archlector, Battle Prayers, that's pretty much covered. Balthar Gelt, probably the memest. I mean, he's not terrible, but yeah, he's not good though. I can't think of a reason.
I think he has like insane magic regeneration.
Yeah, he has huge, but the problem is he's not Law of Life. If he was Law of Life, it'd be insane. He's Law of Metal though, which is really an odd thing out to bring. Maybe against Chaos, Warriors of Chaos, it could be good if you're expecting something really strange.
I mean, I could see against, for example, Chaos, like you said, maybe bring Plague of Rust, a couple of Huntsmen, and then just try that.
Yeah, Plague of Rust is definitely.
Plague of Rust, because you're like the Air Force is not going to threaten you in the air that much, because if you have Huntsmen, you can just basically
shoot them down.
Kill the Manticores and stuff of the Final Transmutation is like punishes the Chaos blobs with single.
Yeah, the blob stacks.
But it's like you can also just go for calf rounds.
Yeah, the problem is there's better options. Like he's just sort of lacking anything decent. It's kind of sad. Maybe you could pair him with another caster. But then you're just like, why are you not just bringing a Lord and then the caster? You're only really bringing it for the really good mana regeneration.
I saw sometimes double caster with basically Calfrance, yeah, not Calfrance. Gelt just providing like the stuff of Volans and some fine transmutations, because I think you can get a lot of fine transmutation stuff.
Yeah, you can get a lot, like 5 at least, even 6 on a good day, depending on what you start off with as well.
But yeah, that's
the limit of him. He's basically a battery. He's just a battery, and that's it. It's unfortunate because he's supreme and he's memed so often. Somebody else that's memed is Carl Friends. Probably the strongest single entity in the... If you put him on Deathglow, he's the strongest single entity in the Empire roster, I think. He's a pretty monstrous duelist, especially when you start pairing him with his items. He can take down most things quite reliably. He takes damage quite quickly, so if he gets surrounded, it can certainly suffer. But overall, he does do a lot better than any other sort of single entity, be it a hero or anything, more or less. He's just a very hard hitter. With his abilities, he can buff his own melee defense up, which can sort of make up for that lacking 38 when you put him on Deathclaw. Usually you're putting him on Deathclaw. It's rare that you take him off Deathclaw unless you have no need for the fear and terror. In that case, you might be tempted, or basically, if you just don't need the fear and terror. So if you're fighting the undead, but then again, if you're fighting the undead, why you're not bringing Volkmar, I don't know. So more or less, you've always seen him with Deathclaw.
Yeah, the thing with Calfrance is he has a bit of lower HP pool than most other giant lords and single entities, Like I think 4K is like way lower than Guy on a Dragon.
Yeah, because
So
I think a Griffin
that's
is
why
just.
you always say
lower
he's
than
kind of
Dragon.
glass cannony. He's a good support bot. But if his buffs run out and he hasn't killed the enemy yet, he will suffer.
Yeah.
And to circumvent this, you normally pair, or like normally you pair him with a life wizard. If you don't bring a life wizard, gift card friends,
Yeah.
you either have like a very specific strategy, or you are pretty new and just like different laws, try out different laws of
Yeah.
but the value you get more from him is just insane. If you have regrowth, slap upon him, he generates 1,400.
Gets his vigor
something.
back as well, yeah,
Gets his vigor back,
1,392.
Also, the Welcome Reg, he just joined.
Welcome, Rich. Yeah.
Yep. That's pretty much card friends. Or you got anything to add, Reg?
Is he here? Did
He's
you just
here.
change for the show? I mean, is he here? Oh, he's here.
Oh.
So I'm not entirely too sure what you said about Call Friends at the beginning, but his Pegasus is kind of viable against Tomb Kings because he can catch stuff, fly around.
Yeah. You still, yeah, because you still get the armor piercing, which is definitely an odd thing out for him. All his mount on all of his mounts, he always gets armor piercing. Which is why, again, you only really bring Deathclaw if you want the Fear and Terror, because the stats do get a lot worse when you put them on Deathclaw, but he gets a bit more health than the Fear and Terror. Also, the Discourage, don't Griffins get like a AoE Discourage? Yeah, they do. Blood Raw. So he's really hard. Oh, that also goes for Boris, I believe, with his ability that is only effective when something's beneath 50% leadership. When he's under Griffin, he gets Blood Raw, which reduces leadership by 8 to everything, as long as he's in melee. But yeah, as long as you're popping his items, he's pretty good. He's very glass cannony, like I said, but he's very hit and run. Basically, think of him as just a Dragon Lord, and you can usually, well, except for no breath attacks, but you usually get away with most things with him. On to Marcus Wolfhart.
Pretty mid-tier, pretty average.
Yeah, pretty average Lord. There isn't any. There's some situations where he's meta. I think against maybe against Wood Elves.
He's the problem against Wood Elves is he can get killed by one man or something. Just terrifying.
I mean, he has the stalk. Well, then it's not going to save him from the medic or very much. He has a net, which can help. And usually, I think it only takes 1 or 2 shots on the Manticore to send it into a rampage.
He does obliterate sisters with both his abilities.
Yeah, if you're bringing him against Wood Elves, it's mainly to counter snipe things. So just the
I've
sisters.
seen him
always
against Skaven a couple of times actually, but I don't think it's the most
viable thing.
option.
I think he was used against Skaven when Monster Mesh was big in with everyone. When Throt was in with everyone, everyone just wanted to net down Throt basically. But now that Throt's easily catchable, he's not used as much.
I just played a match on Anticity's matchmaking, and I was playing Dwarves against Empire, and he brought Marcus and 2 the Witch Hunters, and he was able to snipe a Lord.
Yeah, that is a lot of sniping tools. So he had no caster.
No caster?
Yeah, he didn't have a caster.
That's pretty
Holy
meta.
shit.
That is
It
the
was
next
pretty whack,
level.
But my Lord died really fast.
I think I met that guy this with a similar build on ladder once.
Did you? Maybe it's a meta
Yeah.
build. I will use it
No,
immediately.
he went down against Skaven.
Never mind.
Just keep your lord out of range of the witch hunters, and I mean I saw them, so
Yeah, you just shot them.
surprising.
Anyway,
Anyway, okay.
to
Sorry,
Volkmar the Grim, the last lord of the list. In my opinion,
Reg, you're
One-
Reg, you're a bit hard to hear, so maybe pump up the volume or
I
something.
see. Let me see.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry.
it should be better now. I think my Discord volume was a bit low because I've been messing with the settings a lot recently. Should be fine.
Is this any better?
That is way too loud. Hang on a second, let me change it again. That's okay. Should be okay now.
Test.
Yeah, sounds
better.
better. Chat? Yeah, chat sits better.
Yeah, I know what's going on. It's alright. Alright, Volkmar the Grim. I'd say the best lord. Personally, in my opinion, I think he's the best lord. The stats really don't make you think that way when you put him on his chariot. You're almost always going to put him on his wall to a Sigmar. Just because he gets the... what does he get on his chariot? That's good again. I forget.
It's terror.
He gets his banishment,
extra-
he gets his terror, and he gets the
He
fact
gets
that he's a
extra
chariot.
resistance too. It goes up to 40% magic resist.
40%.
Unbreakable.
25.
Yeah, unbreakable. Does he not have that on foot or on horse? No, he doesn't.
Fire
No.
damage, magic damage.
Yeah. So yeah, he gets those on horse foot. Basically, you always
Oh, no,
put him
yeah.
on his war altar.
The altar gives him more magic resist.
Yeah, it gives him more magic resistance. It gives him unbreakable, makes him cause fear and terror, There's the more. I think it gives them. No, it doesn't give them any more missile resist, but it also gives them the bound spell of banishment, which he doesn't get, which is pretty good. Getting 2 banishments is like what Lizardmen Lords get. Well, Slan Lords specifically, but so it's pretty good to get 2 banishments, 3 winds of magic, and then you pile on the fact that he has all these buffs that you can plant around, and when you put them on a chariot that can run through lines really easily, you can get to areas you need to buff quite easily, and apply Soulfires. Or these all grand versions as well, the same as what the Archlector gets. And his item as well, Regeneration. When you put him on this much of a health pool, I believe he has more health pool than Franz, he can keep himself healed up. He can run around, heal himself up, he'll never rout, so you don't have to worry about being get runned off, and he has 100 armor as well. He is very difficult to kill.
Keep him away from any single entity though.
Yeah,
he will get
he is not for killing single entities, he's for just supporting troops and running through like infantry blobs. Run into cavalry if you have to, as long as you're buffing your own cavalry, it doesn't really matter. His buff that really just swing the fight entirely, and then you throw in like fear and terror that you're causing, the fact that he's unbreakable, and the banishments as well to clear off chaff, and he's a real killing machine. Not against single entities though, so you usually need to pair with like something else in order to kill single entities, whether it be a range focus or a cavalry focus, because he can't take out single entities whatsoever.
Okay, I think we have to move on to the heroes because
yes, probably should speed up a lot.
Roster.
Okay, Empire Captain. Don't bring him. He's not that good.
Yeah.
He doesn't do an awful. The only thing you're bringing him for, he's your basic melee specialist lord, like a Graveguard or anything. He can get quite cheap, but typically as Empire you're bringing better heroes, or you're filling up your hero and lord slots a lot differently. Like you're bringing Franz plus a caster, and then you only have space for 1 Empire Captain. But usually you want to bring a warrior priest as well, so your typical layout will be general, caster, and then priest of some variation. You're rarely going to have anything much different than that. And so you don't have space for the Empire Captain. It's just not really worth it. Unfortunately, the same thing does go for the Witch Hunter most of the time. His missile resistance buff, if you're going a heavy missile build with like Marcus and then some other kind of caster, usually this accusation ability can be good to snipe things. It's the only really sniping sort of effect that Empire get, but these 2 heroes just are undervalued compared to anything else you might want to fill up the 3 slots with. So you'll only ever see them if you're like, you've brought Franz, you've brought your life mage, you don't want a warrior priest for some reason, but you always want a warrior priest. So unless there's some reason, so if you bring Volkmar and then you bring your caster, you've already got your priest role filled up, so you can bring in one of these, but you almost always want to fill in the 3 roles of caster, lord, and priest, because those 3 effects are pretty key to the Empire playstyle, and so you just don't have room for the other 2, unfortunately. Of course, the warrior priest is the one that you're typically bringing when you're not bringing Volkmar. The buff prez are just really good. It doesn't cost you any winds of magic. It only costs you bringing a hero, and he also has his fire damage that you can apply to everything, all allies in range. You say about
Basically, we get second school of magic for free.
A lot of people bring Demigryph. They beat out any cav engagement in the game pretty much.
Yeah, you just clump up some Demigryph halberds or anything, any cav, really anything that can keep up with a warrior priest on a horse. You stick it with them, and then you just have a big blob of death that can get buffed up with Hammer of Sigmar and Shield of Faith and Benediction to keep them in the fight. And it becomes really hard to beat. Yeah, slap some healing. Throw Karl Franz in for extra buffs, and it's a moving star of death, more or less. For the casters, all the casters for Empire are quite renowned for being very cheap. Like if you take everything off of them, you can really get their cost down, like to 250. And so it lets you take Lord heroes just for 1 spell. You'll often see like, sometimes you might see an Amethyst Wizard just to bring Spirit Leads because it gets so cheap that it's actually kind of viable. It's only really viable for the Empire just because of how cheap their heroes get. But again, you're filling up that hero slot so easily that you're only typically bringing 1 caster. And spoiler alert, most of the time it's going to be a Jade Wizard. Even if you're bringing Volkmar or Boris Toadbringer, you might still want a Jade Wizard, because if you pair Jade Wizards with Royal Altdorf Griffites, Demigryph Knights and the likes, then you're just getting so much more value. It is rare. The only situations that you don't usually bring a Jade Wizard is if you're bringing a Bright Wizard to kill undead with. That's about it when it comes to caster options. You can sometimes see an Amber Wizard against like Skaven or Greenskins because the Manticore summons are good and they still get Manticore summons, and you can also put them on an Imperial Griffin to cause that fear, terror, and blood roar again. But that's about it. You can also see a Grey Wizard against elves.
I mean, light wizards are pretty good for heavy missile builds too.
Yeah, if you're doing some sort of heavy missile
Corona.
build, but you can already get nets from Marcus if you want them that badly. But again, you can just bring him just for the net spell, but filling up that hero slot is kind of hard. Felix and Gotrek. I don't see them used very often in Empire. I don't know what you two think, but I don't see them that good in the Empire roster. They don't feel terrible because the Empire roster is such a mobile core that these two kind of just slug around and get tied down really easily. It's a strong duo. It will always usually work, but of course, if you're bringing Gotrek and Felix, you kind of have to bring a caster option, and then your only option for a caster lord is Balthazar. That doesn't usually work out too well because then you can't heal them as good. I mean, you're sure you get Felix, but then his healing's kind of wasted on Balthazar. It's a really awkward situation where you can see Felix and Volkmar. That is actually something you can see kind of regularly. Phoenix, Volkmar, then throw in a caster. That can be a strong option against like vampire counts, but that's about it. You definitely don't see Gotrek nearly as often as any of the other factions that he's available in. On to the state militia of the Empire.
Oh, something we forgot to mention is Volkmar's buffs stack with the normal word.
They stacked, did they? I didn't actually know that. I didn't know.
Yes, they're different.
Yeah, so you can bring 2 warrior priests basically. You can bring 2 priest effects. You can bring Volkmar and the warrior priest, and then you bring your caster as well. So you have your effects. If you really want to stack those buffs on top of each other, then that's what you can pull off. Of course, it is a lot of micro because you have to press like all the buttons on each row.
Yes.
It's a lot of pressing buttons.
It has a lot of buttons.
Onto the infantry, basic spearmen. Basically, basic, more or less. You don't usually bring these as your front line. You might just bring them if you've stacked up. Usually, the only time I see myself bringing these is when I stack up on 5 units of spearmen with shields, then realise I've hit the unit cap for them, so I bring some extras just to throw in the back line. Because they're very cheap, very efficient at holding for a good period of time. They got some pretty solid stats for their cost. 34 melee defense is pretty good for only 325 gold. But you're almost always going to be bringing the shielded version instead because it's an extra 8 for 50, and then you also get missile parry chance as well with the shielded version, which is a very usual, I'd say, front line for Empire, is the spearmen with shields, and then you'll have, if you have ranged units in the back, you'll stack some regular spearmen just to defend them. That's more or less it for spearmen. They, of course, they're anti-large, but truth of the matter is they won't win against anything bigger than like a cheap horse. They'll struggle against anything that's actually large, but they'll hold for long enough so that something that's actually powerful can get over there. Swordsmen are basically think of them as instead of being a defensive unit, they're a anti-infantry, I'd say. They're the anti-infantry front line, so if you're expecting a really chaffy front line that you want to go through, Swordsmen can fulfill the role quite nicely. There's not many really chaffy front lines. Like I'm certain they'll beat clan rats, and they definitely beat deckhand mobs. I wouldn't recommend them against undead though because they're low morale, but they're cheap for what they are. For what you're wanting to get, it's better than spearmen if you're trying to get through a front line instead of trying to hold a front line. Halberdiers are spearmen but armor piercing.
Halberdiers are a trap.
Yeah,
they are a trap.
They look good, but they actually have less melee defense than spearmen with shields for like even more of the cost. All you're really getting there is the armor piercing and like 10 more leadership. That's it. That's all you're really paying for.
You lose a shield.
Yeah, and you lose your shield. If you really, really want the halberdiers that much, just bring like anything else that's armor piercing, because they can't catch. The problem with halberdier units, this doesn't just go for Empire, this goes for everything, is that they're anti-large, but they're not quick enough to catch the large. So most of the time, things can just run through them, and there's not an awful lot they can do to stop you.
They also, as all halberdiers, have a very slow attack animation, so anything can charge in. Like they get one hit, maybe in, they charge out, and that attack is wasted because halberds apparently need like a really long attack animation.
They take a really big weapon; they have to take a long time to swing, apparently. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend halberdiers most of the time. I would just say bring more spearmen. It's much more cost efficient, and you're basically getting the exact same thing. Flagellants are the real damage dealer infantry. Then they have Unbreakable, Frenzy, and strength of the penitent, which gives them an extra 15% physical resistance for 15 seconds. But only when they only recharges when they're losing in melee, and it only activates when they're in melee as well. So this makes these guys, because they have no armor and no shield, they're really weak to missiles. They're really weak to any kind of breath spell as well. They are very fragile, especially with 12 melee defense. They are not going to last very long, but they do quite a hefty amount of damage. They get up to 14 melee attack with their frenzy activated. And the fact that they don't run away as well means that their melee defense isn't as much of a detriment, because they're going to be holding forever anyway. Especially good against like chaffy front lines, especially good against undead, because you don't have to worry about the fear and terror that is definitely going to be brought against Empire. So I'd recommend these guys against pretty much all undead factions. And then
I would say also
Greenskins. Yeah, I'd say Skaven and
Yes.
Greenskins as well, maybe. Someone gave the Flagellants a shield, pretty much, and you got Sigmar Sons. Probably, I'd say, the only unit in the Empire roster I'd say to must-have in nearly every army.
Yeah, you could definitely say that. They beat out a lot of stuff that is kind of weird to look at and watch, because of 41 and 41.
Yeah, a huge stat increase. It's basically if you gave Flagellants good stats, like actually decent melee defense, and then you also gave them a shield and a little bit of armor for like 100 more. It's if you're ever bringing Flagellant unit, bring the Sigmar. Oh, just every time you're building an Empire army, bring the Sigmar Sons. I don't think there's a build. I mean, no, I don't think there's a single faction that you could fight that you wouldn't want to bring the Sigmar Sons. They work against everything that you could ever really want to kill, and because they're unbreakable as well, you're never going to have to worry about fear and terror with them. It's just a very, very strong all-around unit that you pretty much want in any situation. Because of the weakness of other Empire infantry, they really shine through there.
They're basically like the 8-bit Lunix from the Greenskins roster, who still remember that session. Unbreakable goblins, which you basically bring in almost all matchups.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fulfill the same role, except that they don't kill that good, because they don't get loonies, but...
No, yeah, they don't get the loonies, but they have better... I think they have more health and more just stats than the 8-pigs. The Tattersalls, the ROR Flagellant units... what's the special thing? Oh yeah, they have more models. They have way more health. They have like a huge extra 2,000 health, and obviously the stats of a triple chevron unit of Flagellants. It's something.
Generally, you're not going to bring those.
But yeah,
No, they're not worth it.
Sigmar Sons, the Sigmar Sons.
yeah, it's a Sigma. Like if you're going really heavy in the Flagellants and you have some money left over, sure, swap out one of your Flagellants for a for a Tattersalls unit. But that's about it. If you don't have the money, it's not really worth it. I wouldn't go Tattersalls first. I'd be like, okay, I have a bit of money left over. May as well switch out one of my Flagellants for Tattersalls. That's
If you
literally
don't switch out anything else like a cat
it.
unit. then
Yeah, if there's nothing
way
better
better.
to switch out, then this is your last option. I'm not saying it's completely unusable. It's just there are definitely better options out there.
It's all about cost efficiency in multiplayer. You
Definitely.
pay like almost the price of another Spearman unit for just like a slightly better unit. And
For ever
because
so
of the
slightly.
low melee defense, they just like die like second later. But
Because they have more models, even more vulnerable to breath spells as well. Which doesn't help them out too much, which is a shame. The Greatswords are sometimes a surprise unit that you can definitely pull on rush factions like Greenskins, Norska, and Chaos. Because
Lisbon.
yeah, Lizardmen as well. Just a lot of factions that go quite heavy in the infantry rush department. You typically want to bring 1 or 2 units of Greatswords, because it's something that definitely throws off those rush factions, because they're so expecting a really weak Empire front line that these units can chew through things pretty well. I believe they might. I don't think they beat Black Orcs with War activated, but without War, I believe they beat Black Orcs. I think they definitely beat regular Chaos Warriors. Definitely beat Saurus, which pretty much no other Empire infantry can say they can beat those things. This is your only option to beat those things in melee, more or less, unless you're just going to be cycle charging them with Cav. But you don't really have a reliable anti-infantry, like armor-piercing unit, so you have to rely on Greatswords in order to do that in the front line, pretty much. But they're a pretty good unit. They're definitely overlooked sometimes because people think, okay, I'm Empire, I'm just going to use chaff in my front line. But Greatswords are definitely not to be looked down on too badly. Anything to add for the infantry section, anyone?
I mean, generally, yeah. I mean, it's combined arms. I don't recommend going like full one type of unit as your front line. You can mix in like Swordsmen and Flagellants. That helps a lot. Or Flagellants and Spearmen. That helps.
Yeah, you want to mix together these components so that you have good all-rounder front line. But always have a Sigmar Sons in it. That's pretty much it. Your backline, however, is covered by the missile infantry, starting with archers. I don't bring them. I don't bring them too often.
Rated.
Go on, you talk from there if you're underrated.
They have trash range, but honestly, they're not terrible against Wood Elves because if you bring 3 of them, then that's 350 gold they have to shoot at just so that you're not shooting back. They also do pretty well against Stag Knights because Stag Knights will run straight through your front line. But they're just cheap and they don't have the same range as crossbows, but crossbows are so much more expensive and they have a bigger incentive for you to shoot back.
I definitely see the archers. They have their spread out formation compared to crossbows, which are clumped up, which can definitely help with their counter firing things. Like Wood Elves, for example. Like if Waywatcher shots are getting fired into archers, half of them are going to waste pretty much. But if they're going to crossbowmen, that's a lot more likely to hit. So I can definitely see them, against more or less just against Wood Elves, maybe against Skaven, just those units that you have sort of like that incentive that you're going to get counter shot a little bit. But they're not worth shooting, which is the problem, archers. So you can just shoot back. You're not going to do an awful lot of damage, but it's unlikely you're going to come up with much counter fire resistance. You just need to make sure nothing that is half decent in melee gets near them, because they're terrible in melee.
Against Skaven, I would honestly advise maybe mix in like Free Company Militia.
Yeah, Free Company Militia probably because
archers just die to
wolf rats. Yeah,
that's
true.
Whereas Free Company Militia would put off some kind of fight.
Yeah, typically you do worry about wolf rats almost whenever you go against Skaven. You always have to keep wolf rats in mind. Speaking of which, Free Company Militia, they're a ranged unit that's good in melee, more or less.
Probably one of the best hybrid infantry units.
I think they have like stats fairly. Yeah, they basically have just worse swordsman stats, but they have a pistol instead, basically. Which, when you're firing off that first volley as well, even if you, I wouldn't recommend using them to charge. I'd see if you can fire many volleys as you can before you go into melee. But if you're getting attacked by a hound unit, firing off that first volley can usually mean you're going to win, and which definitely can throw people off. If your entire backline is made of Free Company Militia, then all those hound units aren't going to win, because I believe hounds will always lose to Free Company Militia, no matter what kind of hound. And I think there's a single hound. Well, maybe Norscan Ice Wolves would win against Free Company Militia, but even then, if they get a counter volley or two off, and considering how cheap they are, you can usually spam them out. There isn't too much to worry about when it comes to.
Regiment around gets a fat stat increase.
Yeah,
they get
huge stat increase.
Damage, and they shred Tomb Scorpion.
And they also get immune psychology as well. We'll get onto those in a minute anyway. Crossbowmen, basically the archers, but they're clumped up. They have greater range and they have more ammunition. It's a real toss-up. I can never make my mind up between these two, so I typically just don't bring either, because I can't make up my mind on which one I bring. I just don't bring them. I don't know if either of you have anything to say about crossbowmen and archer situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awkward. I can never find a reason to bring either, when I can just bring guns instead, or like any other.
Huntsman.
Yeah, or huntsman, or any kind of like I just see, or like pistoliers. I see so much more use in pistoliers than I do in crossbowmen or archers, and they fulfill basically the same role, except for pistoliers can run, and it can be used to chase off enemy units. So yeah, I just don't see an awful lot of use in them. Although the Deathjacks, I do see a use in, because they get the snipe and vanguard deployment and stalk. They are very good at sniping unsuspecting artillery pieces if you manage to put them behind something. So against like Vampire Coast, I'd say that's also going back to it. I'd say that's one matchup that you bring a spam of archers against Vampire Coast. So you throw one of these in as well, and you can snipe Vampire Coast artillery pretty easily, assuming they don't get spotted by anything. You should be okay. They're pretty good. With a snipe ability is definitely I think it's unique, isn't it? Yeah, for the Empire roster, yeah, Huntsmen don't get it. So being able to snipe stuff. No snipe.
Oh, no snipe, okay.
It does work pretty well if you're trying to snipe specific tools that are like Queen Bess. If you put a couple volleys from the Deathjacks, you'll probably send it into crumbling, and then it'll die. And then you would have defeated like a really expensive unit for 550 gold. So it's a risk, but it's something fun to play around with whenever you have the time. Handgunners. I
have mixed feelings about handgunners.
Yeah, I definitely see. Yeah, against Tomb Kings, I think is one of the areas you might bring them.
The weird thing against Tomb Kings is that they have a tight formation. Really, your team handgun or your team huntsman. All right. Handguns have a tight formation, and they can get sniped really, really, really easily. Especially because they don't have stock too.
Yeah.
Huntsmen, against Tomb King specifically, handguns will kill a large thing just a slight bit faster, but they're easier to snipe.
Yeah, and I definitely see
Logic just just wants to point out that crossbowmen, he likes them where there isn't a lot of armor to shoot through. In the he likes them in those matchups where there isn't a lot of armor to shot.
Whenever I'm going against like a low armor faction, I typically like huntsmen a bit more instead, because of the stalk and such. They can't get sniped by like Skaven, for example. It's a lot harder for them to get a counter shot.
I hate them against Skaven.
Yeah, no, that's why they're good. That's how you can tell.
I mean, I'm Skaven.
Yeah,
so.
that's how you know. Skaven mains just heard it here first.
That.
Yeah, but with handgunners, I just see like I always think to myself, do I want to bring handgunners or can I just bring outriders? Because they're just a much more versatile unit. In nearly every scenario, you can just bring outriders instead of handgunners. When it comes to basic handgunners, that is, you just bring outriders instead. If you really want handgunners, bring outriders. The only situation you don't want to bring handgunners, don't want to bring outriders, is if you're worried that there's going to be a lot of wolves and you're boxing up in a formation. But that's never a good idea, especially as Empire, which has got quite good mobility tools. So, I wouldn't recommend handgunners in most situations. Huntsmen, though, are just better archers, like a lot better archers, I think, in terms of they get more ammunition, range, and some slightly better sort of stats. But the main thing that comes in with them is the fact they get their abilities. So they get Vanguard deployment, fast whilst moving, and most importantly Stalk, which means they can't be like destroyed before they reach the front line. Because this is especially true for crossbowmen and handgunners, less so for archers because they're not worth shooting. But like a single artillery shot can usually send them running quite quickly. But huntsmen, you can't see them when on the approach, which not only means that they can't deploy their resources to kill them or hunt them down with wolves, but also means that they aren't going to get counter shot before they even reach the front line. The same goes for the next three RORs. All of them have Stalk. The Sterling's Revenge, Silver Bullet, and the White Wolves all have Stalk. And having it on a ranged unit, which is typically targeted first because of their low leadership, means that they're not going to die before they get to the front line, which means they can usually get their entire value out. For the Sterling's Revenge, they said this earlier, they get immune psychology and their missile strength becomes armor piercing. And they also get a huge stat buff. They become actually like pretty good. And I think that's better than like Flagellant melee attack. It's just about the same as Flagellant melee attack they get on the Sterling's Revenge. So they can definitely handle themselves out quite nicely against anything. And also the fact they have their armor piercing attacks and really throws people off. The Silver Bullets get magical damage, and what else do they get? They get their Stalk as well, which is such a huge benefit because they're not going to get counter shot, which definitely helps them survivability. Yeah, because they're not going to be able to get camera shot. But they don't have snipe though, so when they start shooting, they're going to get revealed. But until then, they'll be fine. Because they get their magical damage, that means you can kill... This is one of the few ways... Because most of the time with the Empire roster, you're getting magical damage by just casting Flaming Sword of Ruin. But this is one scenario we don't have to do that. Because they have magical damage from being an ROR. And they also get Stalk. So they can't be sniped as easily. And the White Wolves are the White Wolves. What do the White Wolves get?
They're just better huntsmen.
They're just
and immune to psychology.
yeah, they get good, and they just get really good melee stats and immune to psychology and encourage. Yeah, that's what they get.
I can't remember ever seeing them in
Yeah, I don't see it. It appears just like if you merge the huntsman with like a free company militia, you get that pretty much.
It's the same deal with Tattersouls if you have extra money.
Yeah, if you have extra money, replace a huntsman unit with the White Wolves. Why not? They'll actually looks like they're going to win a town. Yeah, before you replace the Flagellants, you replace the huntsman with the White Wolves.
Obviously, yeah.
The list goes to getting an order sorted out here. Now, the great strength, sometimes, not all the times of Empire, is the cavalry options. Empire Knights, pretty cheap, but well armoured. Terrible stats, but 110 armour, and a bronze shield is pretty good. They're a shot cav, but they only have 48 charge bonus. They're very tanky, but they aren't going to be doing a lot of damage anytime soon. Do you guys think any different?
I mean, yeah, it's your basic medieval 2 knight unit.
Yeah, it's just a knight unit. That's not
great for the costs, like having one on the backline protecting against hounds for your ranged units. Always nice. Beat hounds very easily.
Yeah, they'll beat any non-armor piercing cav because they have 110 armor. So anything fast moving, like some cheap skirmish cav that you just want to throw them at, or some hounds, or any of that light cav options that elves get, they'll win
They're
because
not
they
going to catch them, but
yeah. But if they get into melee, they'll win because they have 110 armor, which is huge.
Pretty good to pair with demigryphs, because sometimes you'll see factions with hounds run hounds into demigryphs and then something to do damage, because they only have 24 models.
This way the knights can kill the hounds. They're basically the chaff to soak up for the demigryph knights and such, because the demigryph knights can get surrounded in combat, but if you have a knight unit and a demigryph unit, usually the knights are soaking a lot of damage for the demigryphs, which can work quite nicely. Now a halfway decent unit that's in melee is the Reichsguard. The Reichsguard is a lot more of a shock cav compared to the Empire Knights. They get like a little bit more armor, and their stats are better, but the charge bonus goes up like a full 14, which can really help them in the damage department.
In a lot of cav engagements, like against Blood Knights and Dragon Princes, they lose, but they take like 5 minutes.
Yeah, just because of how much armor they have. Against those like non-armor piercing mega cavs, they'll do really well. Although it should be noted that all of the Empire cav is really heavily armored, so be aware that people are probably going to bring armor piercing anti-large against the Empire, because it's plainly obvious that you're going to see some armored knights of some variant, because that's where they're really strong, they're really good. There's not usually a reason to not click something in this area onto your list. An even bigger shock cav would be the Knights of the Blazing Sun, who have huge more charge bonus. They also get actually decent melee attack and fire damage. The magic resistance isn't usually noted that much, but it's there, which nothing to complain about. Its existence is good enough. But this is an actual shock cav. This is something you don't want to be leaving in melee for too long. You just want to be running this through anything and everything that you can get through. The fire damage is a nice added bonus, but typically it's just a really good shock cav compared to the other two, which tend to be more of a holding cav, despite being called shock cavs.
So generally, whatever matchups they lose and win, the Reichsguard will lose and win the same. It's just the Knights of Blazing Sun do everything faster. They die faster and they win faster.
Yeah, it's a pretty good way of putting it. They're just faster at everything they do. They kill faster, they die faster. Yeah.
Against Skaven, I would say Knights of the Blazing Sun are better.
Yeah, but I think against like vampire counts.
Moscow.
Yeah, Norska as well. Basically, when you know that fire damage is going to... They're quite even. I think the Reichsguard usually has the edge in just on an average situation. But when that fire damage is actually going to be useful, I'd say use the Knight of the Blazing Sun instead.
That's also the only counter Empire has to Drive Rush.
More or less. The ROR, Reichsguard, Zinter's Reichsguard, just get immune to psychology and Vanguard deployment, pretty much. That's it. Which is, do this first, then you do the White Walls, and then you do the Tattersouls if you have to.
Yeah.
More or less. This is probably the best version of an upgrade compared to Reichsguard, especially if you're fighting something with Fear and Terror. Having immune psychology on a Reichsguard unit can be surprisingly handy, but it's just I have some money left, better upgrade my Reichsguard to Zinter's Reichsguard. Because the Vanguard deployment does not help. I've never had that help me, ever. In all my time, I've never seen that actually be used.
Yeah, I don't use it either.
I still just leave them in the back line, because I don't want to put them in like a random bush in case they get surrounded by hounds. More like shot to pieces. So, upgrade whenever you feel like it. Now on to the show.
Was maybe good, but not anymore.
Everyone saw the Empire trailer. Demigryph Knights are the 3 variants. Regular Demigryph Knights, I don't use very often. I don't know if you guys do.
I find they're better against vampire counts. So they will trade with Blood Knights, but they'll also be able to help against like a Graveguard spam.
Do they beat Blood Knights?
Whereas I believe it's a trade. I don't
it's
think
a pretty
it's
good trade. Yeah, but
the Halberds win.
Halberds win. Yeah, I know Halberds win. Especially the Altdorf Griffites. That's pretty much the difference here. The Demigryph Knights have really decent stats, but the Demigryph Knights at Halberds get a huge anti-large, like 25 anti-large.
Yeah, but they suffer really hard if counts go Graveguard Rush. They literally can't do anything.
Yeah, they are not regular Demigryph Knights are, it says in the title they're a monstrous shock cav, but when you're wanting a shock cav, you have 4 other options that are more designed for it. These aren't really that designed for it feels like, because shock cavs kind of need a good chunk of models in order to be that efficient, and their model size is quite small as well, so they don't end up doing that much damage on the charge for a shock cav compared to everything else. But they are very good at shock caving into large units, which is why the Demigryph Knights with Halberds just typically better, because it means if you run into something that's large, you're guaranteed to hit it. Plus, you add the charge bonus with the bonus versus large, plus the base melee attack, you're almost guaranteed to hit it every time you charge into it with these. As even more so with the Royal Altdorf Gryphites, which just have huge stats and also terror causing. It should be noted that whenever, general rule of thumb is whenever you're bringing any of these units, you bring a life caster. It's not worth it. Their low model count and their huge health pools per model means you always want a life caster with these things. If you're ever bringing these, you bring a life caster. If you're bringing one of these, you bring a life. There's no exception really to that rule. I don't think there's any situation where you bring these and you don't want a life caster. Even if you really, really want that fire caster, you bring a life caster with these three. It's just way better.
I find fire a rarer pick in Empire's roster because of the warrior priest ability.
Yeah, I only use it against undead, more or less. I think that's the only situation for it, is when you're fighting the undead. But even against the undead, there's like some situations that you just want to bring the Jade Wizard instead, because you're going like heavy in the Demigryph Knights with halberds to counter vampire counts or something. I think against Vampire Coast is when you bring fire, and then Tomb Kings is like half and half whether or not you're going fire or Jade.
Light.
Yeah, Logic wants to
Right,
point
right,
out
or
that
Jade.
all the Demigryph Knights, especially the halberd version, is a bit weak to getting focus fired by armor-piercing missiles.
Yeah, they're quite.
You can get hit.
Also getting surrounded.
You lose the shield from the normal version.
Yeah, the halberd variant
Never-
loses the bronze shield. That they
Never
normally
ever
have.
bring demigods against the Scourge Runners will.
Yeah,
But I think this is the game-winning units that you have.
yeah.
Demigryph Knights.
These is the anti-large unit pretty much for the Empire. Is these? These will kill pretty much any single entity. If they surround a single entity, I don't think there's a single entity that would win, surrounded by the Royal Altdorf Gryphites. Yeah, even like a Charybdis would lose surrounded by the other Altdorf Gryphites. Even what's a giant lizard called? That no one ever brings because it's terrible. It's way too expensive. No, it's
The
way too
Dreadsaurian.
expensive. Yeah, Dreadsaurian, that's the one. Even if that's surrounded by the Altdorf Gryphites, I don't see it winning. I'll be back in a second if you guys want to start talking about the Pistoliers. Go ahead.
Super good against lightly armored factions with monstrous infantry and stuff like beastmen. They can win a lot of engagements in skirmish lane, except against like chaos. They have 38 missile strength. They only have 80 range. They also fire 2 shots per volley, I believe, which is why their missile strength is so high. Can be a little bit deceptive, I guess. Outriders, all right. They lose the 360-degree firing arc or firing range, but they have armor-piercing damage. So if they get chased, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, they get slightly more range, I think. Like
Yes,
100,
they do. They have
20 or 140 or
yeah.
something.
20.
Also, Venuith wants to point out if normal Demigryph halberds work as well as the Royal Altdorf Gryphites, or will they need a little support? Basically, normally if you go like heavy in the Altdorf Gryphites, if you can, you would support them probably with card rounds because more melee attack, more melee defense to his passive buffs, and also anti-large bonus to like. Oh no, the anti-large bonus I think is not only for him, but you would probably support them still because it's just like it kills things even faster.
Yeah, you really melt through stuff, especially when they're already engaged in combat and you don't get the charge bonus anymore. Throwing out an extra 24 melee attack really does damage.
Yeah, so you would probably support them again with your Lord, and then they will kill like. I mean, it's like I don't know how much gold that is, but it's like 4,000, 5,000 gold. So you would probably kill like anything that you move against.
Yeah, this general squad of like buffs from the Warrior Priest, healing from the Jade Wizard, buffs from Carl Franz, and then like 3 or 2 of these. This will destroy any cav. Any cav combination that the enemy sends at you, this is going to die to. Any cavalry, any single entities, this is going to die to. At this point, when you have something like this, you only need to worry about ranged and infantry, which is why this doesn't work against things that specialize in those areas. But it decimates everything else. Anything large dies to this.
Oddly enough, demigryphs are also faster than all the other cav.
Are they that fast? Yeah, I guess when you're wearing that much armor, it kind of weighs you down a bit. But the big old demigryphs are strong enough to carry that armor around.
Okay.
Did you guys talk about pistols?
Outriders with grenade launchers.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess Outriders are just handgunners on horse. I assume you already talked about Outriders. But with grenade launchers...
You see they have like 40 more range than Pistoliers, but as Reggie pointed out, they're just basically armor piercing. They lose to 360, which makes them like a lot worse against hounds. But they still, if you don't expect too many hounds or can just screen with Empire Knights, you basically get better value, but
Biggest problem
I don't know how the ammo department looks actually.
The ammo, you get more ammo for Outriders, but I believe Outriders have less ammo than handgunners. Yes, they do. Only a little bit.
The biggest problem with Outriders is that melee stats are so trash that literally like any skirmish cav can just put melee attack and fire on at will on, and click on an Outriders unit, and the Outriders just gonna run and get shot.
Yeah. Which is why you basically just bring Outriders as a substitute for handgunners. That's basically all you're doing. You're not even thinking them as a skirmish cav, you can literally just use them as a handgunner that can move faster. And
okay,
you're
guys,
basically
we really need to hurry up because we have
Speed.
to go to the artillery department.
It's fine, it's always last tab anyway.
Okay, Outriders with grenade launchers. Like,
Boom.
They delete... Yeah, basic, boom.
They destroy
delete
infantry.
lowly armored or like mid-tier armored units if they get the volley off. I would recommend not bringing more than like one normally because they're just expensive and difficult to protect. But for example, against like Tomb Kings, like one volley and whatever infantry the Tomb Kings have is gone. Against Skaven, if they don't get shot at by like
against elves, any elves, especially with the tight
Skaven have a
formation.
lot.
Any elf
you
formations.
basically delete like one shot all the Skaven infantry, probably even Storm Vermin.
Yeah. Big boom. Kill infantry, really good.
Yeah, but usually people bring like 2 or 3 year units. I don't think that's necessary because they usually get killed.
Yeah, just
And
bring
they
different
also
skirmish
have,
cavs.
A lot of times, whatever they kill, your front line will actually be.
Yeah. Also, they look like I mean, all the Empire ranged cavalry looks kind of the same. So sometimes you can just sneak one in with Outriders or Pistoliers, and the enemy.
And they'll never see it. Yeah, because the symbol on the minimap is very similar. It's very hard to tell the difference between those 3 symbols. In fact, I'm pretty sure they're the exact same.
They are right.
Yeah, they are the exact same. That's especially misleading, so you really have to look into them to see which one they are. Anyway, war wagons. Yeah, no one has anything to say about them, do they? To this day,
they're usable because
regular war wagons. Yeah, I'd say regular war wagons. Mortar war wagons are trash, and the Black Lions are.
No.
They're the second
If you want to
worst.
show your opponent that you own them, you bring war wagons.
Yeah, the regular war wagons. I feel like there is a place for the regular war wagons somewhere. Maybe somewhere.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'd say chaos because hounds can't pick.
Yeah, because hounds can't. Because they're basically Outriders, but they have that 360.
But honestly, I see them die to hounds or like normal skirmish cav. So
They don't
I mean,
get
they
caught with
survive
that,
longer,
though. Yeah, they survive longer. Yeah, so.
Yeah, against your rat wolves. Of course they're gonna die.
I don't think they're good against rats.
Yeah, they probably get just shot to
Give
pieces
me
by
one unit of
sails.
Zades and I kill your war wagons in seconds.
Yeah, war wagons are memes. Don't worry about those. Mortars, they're mortars. Yeah, you shoot them into lightly armored infantry. You're basically firing the Outriders with grenade launchers, and the mortars are basically firing at the same thing. But these are actually like further away, and those you have to run up against something.
Mortars are actually very important in the Empire's roster, so they help you win against range fights. So they'll kill Lothern Sea Guard, which
Archers.
is something you struggle with, and they kill Glade Guard, and they kill Dark Shards, allowing you to bring great swords against Dark Elves.
Yeah.
Which is a game changer.
Yeah, you're basically.
mortars, all kind of mortars are really good against, like, except for the war wagon mortars, really good against like archer kind of units. But then you have always to keep in mind, which also goes for like Skaven mortars and everything, you have to screen any of the range units, because if the range units get in range of your mortars, they'll kill them
the crew.
because they kill the crew immediately. So you have to like move up your front line a bit to make sure that you screen with enough distance.
Yeah.
But you will, as Reg pointed out, delete any of the like especially elven missiles, because they're usually bunched up, and if a mortar shell hits, they don't hit that often because they're mortars, but they kill.
They kill really good. Yeah, you're either relying on the mortar or your shot cav to kill the range. There's not really anything else in the Empire roster that kills range. It's your shot cav or the mortars, or both. If you're really worrying about range a lot, bring both. So basically against elves, you bring both. Cannons. They're mortars, but they're shooting at cavalry and large instead.
Don't even get me started on this unit.
They're great cannons.
They lose a lot of. They're so inaccurate. It's depressing.
These are basically just for shooting cav flobs, but the weird thing is that you already kind of have the solution for cav flobs if you have the Death Star of Doom, of Demigorgon Knights and the likes. So actually, you don't see cannons very often. I don't think.
You don't want to move, bring a cannon.
Yeah, if you don't want to go anywhere, bring a cannon. But typically, this is the one situation where it's actually better to just bring the Hammer of the Witches, I think, in most situations. You just bring the Hammer of the Witches over a regular Great Cannon. Because the huge chevroning up actually makes them accurate. And that way they also get a buff to their missile strength and they get magical damage. They also get physical resistance. I've never actually noticed that physical resistance. But that's there as well.
Physical resistance is gonna help them a lot.
I guess it stops them from getting sniped as badly from archers, but that's
I
about
wonder
it.
if it's for the crew or only for the cannons.
I think it applies to both.
I believe it's for the cannons.
I
But
just thought it
It's
applies to both.
actually not useful at all.
But the increase to accuracy and missile strength and magical damage, I'd say before you bring a cannon, think I should probably bring a Hammer of the Witches first.
Like in Warhammer 1, before I knew that chevrons would basically buff up ranged accuracy, I brought the Hammer of the Witches because it just felt like it would do way more damage.
Yeah, even before then, yeah. Especially good if you're... Well, actually, to be fair, ethereal unit's usually so hard to hit that it's not even there for ethereal unit.
The Wood Elf main wants to point out that Way Watchers won't care.
Weren't they? I'm sure they won't. Mr. Elf main. Ugh. Go play Eldar or something, loser.
Yeah.
Get out. Anyway,
Shut up,
Hellmaster Volley Gun.
All right, it's good against Bretonnia. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Hellstorm Rocket Battery.
Dwarves, done. Never bring it. Other than dwarves. Even
Yeah.
then, I would.
Wouldn't you upgrade to the RR version?
I don't like bringing the RR version because all that
Look at that
is so
price.
little ammunition as well. You're getting so little ammo for it.
Really, you get 14 less ammo.
Yeah. You're losing out a lot of ammo for it. I'd say bring the Hellstorm Rocket Battery if you're playing in a 3v3. Or a,
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah.
no, I wouldn't even say a 2v2, it's worth it. 3v3, then you bring it. But that's about
The
it.
Sunmaker has like almost double, I think, the missile
Weapons,
damage.
yeah,
or
missile
even
strength.
more.
I think it fires just a ton more missiles, doesn't it?
That's why it has like 800. Like it's at almost 900. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's
can't
fun.
really disagree with.
It's fun watching a unit get nuked by the Sunmaker, but then it runs out of ammo and you've realised you've run out of ammo and you're like, oh. And then that's it. Then you realise...
let Incap fight us. I think he has already like a couple.
Yeah, let him try. He also does fire damage, but that's so minuscule. It doesn't matter in the slightest. If anything, it's a hazard because most things have fire resistance. And most big armoured things usually have some sort of fire resistance, like Iron Drakes. So it doesn't do much then.
Yeah, shoot against Iron Drakes with the Sunmaker.
Yeah,
I wanna
that's
see if
I want to
can
see
Incap
that
to
fast. Luminarch of
Biggest meme on
Hish.
the Empire. Well, I wouldn't say it's.
You know, I've got to admit, I don't think I've ever used this.
Oh my god, they're amazing in 3v3s and 2v2s.
Yeah, I definitely see that. But it's like, I can't talk about this. Somebody else has to. I have no
The
idea.
normal ones-
Same with this one as well.
normal one-
Was it? I think this one gets a net, doesn't it?
it gets a
Okay,
net,
so
that
the
works
RR
well.
version basically gets a net. It gets a little bit more accuracy and a lot more missile damage, like 500. So like
200.
a lot. You see this sometimes. You used to see it in Warhammer 1. The problem is if your opponent is half decent and he sees this, he will notice that like it's really good against like lords, like Chaos against the Dragon Ogre Shaggers, against Skaven, against the Hell Pits, against Strahd probably as well, like against the guy on the
Bad against
Packmaster, because also like fire damage. So basically you see the theme here. Like against Northgard, if you get protected from a mammoth, it will kill a mammoth like at some point. Problem is it shoots like it has a huge wind-up time for the shot. So if your opponent is decent, he will pay attention. Also the shot doesn't track, which is like logical, but your opponent can dodge it. And
Yeah.
it will probably like two shot, I would say, Throt, maybe 3-shot a Helpet Abomination. But I've used it against Skaven, like I'm just playing Skaven a lot. I've seen
it.
it used against Skaven a lot, and I think it like never paid for itself. It came
you
out
sure
of
it
the battle
doesn't
with
track?
0 gold.
Yeah, it doesn't move. I don't think. I don't think once it's fired, it doesn't usually move. If it does, it's a very
It's
small
a
amount.
slight. It's a slight.
The nice version of the RR is that it has a net of Ammontok, a bound net of Ammontok. It doesn't take up your magic.
Yeah, three of those
Cool, but
for free.
you need to be in range, like what is it, 100 meters? You need to be in
Yeah.
range of 100 meters to make it like useful for like that shot. So it's mostly used to protect the
Yeah,
Luminarch,
because-
the Temple of Luminarch, and then you're still like, why are you using? Like, why is your Luminarch in range of the enemy anyway?
Yeah, because by the time it's in that close in range, you're going to hit it no matter how much it moves, because it moves so fast that
Yeah.
it's not going to be dodgeable.
And usually it can get killed by like hounds or something cheap.
Yeah, or just like a
because-
slight elevation or a tree will put this thing out of business. So
Also, I think it is a bit bugged because if it's moving, like if something is moving like slightly out of range or out of like line of sight, it will like completely wind down the charge animation again. So it will go through the 10-second animation that looks really cool if you have the time to watch it,
Yeah.
and then it will miss.
So not good.
I
Don't do
think this
this.
about it. Reg, you got anything to add?
No.
Fair enough.
Moving on to the biggest beam.
Steam tank.
Yes.
It's too
bad.
expensive. It's way too expensive. It's insanely expensive. 2,200 for this hunk of junk.
That thing is more expensive than a moon dragon.
Yeah, it's not worth it. More or less, it's just not worth it. I think we can end the Empire roster right there. It's not worth bringing this thing. I'm not even going to talk about it. It's just not worth it. It's never worth it. There's never... Apparently it's good against Bretonia, maybe. I mean, we saw it in Zerg's tournament, but it didn't do much. Like, just bring a cannon. That's all you're bringing it for, is for the cannon, pretty much. Don't bring it. Don't use it. Moving on. What else?
I'm leaving now, because
You've had your part.
Adios.
Talk about Empire. See ya. See ya, Reg. Thanks for the help. Wood Elves. You've been playing Wood Elves recently, you said. Come on. Hello? It's just me. He's left me. Glade Lord. I don't use the Glade Lord. Why isn't it called the Glade Lady already? Why is it 2 Glade Lords? Who came up with this idea? Who thought, let's name them both the exact same thing, but only have very minor differences to their abilities? What? Why? This doesn't help anyone. This just makes it really complicated. I mean, to be fair, most of the time you are bringing the second Glade Lord because these abilities are actually useful. This one's abilities are not useful in the slightest. Like, it gets Call of the Woods, which is terrible because last time I checked, Wood Elves were a ranged faction. It does get Helmet Discord, but again, last time I checked, Wood Elves were a ranged faction. So this one's just better. You bring this one instead. Items are terrible, don't bring these, but you bring an Arrow of Kurnus for sniping artillery, and you get a net. You get a net that applies missile resistance in a missile faction. I don't think... If you see the word Glade Lord, you can almost certainly assume it's not this guy. It's the Glade Lady. There isn't a Glade Lord, it's just the Glade Lady. And it's just going to be these 2 abilities. Nearly guaranteed, because bringing a net in as Wood Elves is really strong. And you usually see it on a horse or a dragon. I don't think you see anything in between, because you don't put her on a stag because she's not a melee lord, you don't put her on an eagle because it's not worth it. You put her on a steed and she can snipe stuff, or you put her on a dragon and then you have a dragon that can also snipe stuff. But seeing as the Sisters of Twilight exist now, you're usually just seeing her on a horse for a cheaper variant. The Spellweavers? Yeah, you never bring these. Yeah, there's no reason to bring these. You're not getting a special lore anywhere. I think you get dark magic, but you don't need dark magic on a caster that can't do anything. You just you don't bring a Spellweaver. Not ever, unfortunately. You bring Sisters against factions that don't shoot. You bring Dreicher against factions that shoot. Lord's done, yeah. Yeah, and that's basically it. You bring, or you can go Orion, tag team with Orion and Ares. Anyway, we should probably go through them. I'm going to go one by one. I'm not just going to cover the ones I like. Spellweavers. No, don't bring those. Sisters of Twilight. Yeah, what Alexis said. I give in. It's what Alexis said. You bring Sisters against factions that don't shoot. You bring Dreicher against factions that shoot. And then maybe you want to bring Durthu if you're feeling weird. You can also bring Orion and Ariel if you want an unkillable duo. But actually now Ariel isn't unbreakable anymore, and is actually kind of weak, so I don't think that's the case anymore. Orion is definitely still hard to kill, but I don't think the duo is as hard to kill as it used to be. Seems you can actually break Ariel off. Yeah, Sisters have really good sniping potential. The fact that they can heal up to full nearly with just like a couple of seconds of wait time, as long as you're not throwing them into a situation where they're going to die before they get that buff off, either option is pretty viable, either dragon or eagle. You usually see them on the eagle if you're just for the sniping. If you really want to focus on the healing ability, you bring the dragon. The item isn't very good to my knowledge. I don't think you bring this very often either. Orion gets some nice bound spells which can do a bit of damage, but I've really never noticed them do anything too effective. If you're expecting a lot of chaff, then sure, bring like the hounds of Orion. Obviously you drop Foe Seeker. You always bring this item because it makes him nearly impossible to kill, and you bring this horn if you're bringing a lot of cavalry for some reason, because it's a really big charge bonus buff and it can be very helpful. Yeah, he did get nerfed. Orion plus Ariel. Yeah, he did, didn't he? He got his damage resistance nerfed as well, so this combo isn't as good as it used to be, unfortunately. Dreicher is surprisingly good. Honestly, I think when Dreicher came out, nobody was really expecting her to be as good as she is, but she is the meta pick in some faction cases. Like again, basically when the enemy has ranged, you bring Drycha more or less. Because being able to summon a unit of Dryads, usually summons are weak and they aren't very good damage dealers, but when you're able to summon a unit of Dryads which can chew through archers really easily, it's very effective. Usually, but I often you'll see Drycha just brought with just her ability. Her item is sometimes good if you bring her as a caster, but I think the optimal way to bring Drycha is literally just bring her with her ability. She is pretty tough to kill. She's pretty decent in combat as well, so she's pretty good chewing through like infantry or just going after a caster as well. She's pretty good at doing that, and then she can just summon up a unit of Dryads on archers or an artillery crew. If she summons up a unit of Dryads on any ranged unit, it's gonna die because Dryads are pretty decent damage dealers. Yeah, she's very cheap for what she does. The Ancient Treeman is a life caster that's a tree, which is nice and all. I wouldn't say he's that bad. Like compared to the Spellslinger of Life, I'd bring him any other day. But he's a target, which is one thing. He's a large target. He's going to suffer from ranged firepower quite heavily. And he's not that special. He's just a life caster that they put in a pretty sturdy body. And you don't really get much from that, unfortunately. He does cause fear and terror, but because he's slow, you're not going to be able to make use of that very often. Who is that? It's just joined back. It's Lycus is back.
Some technical difficulties, quality German internet, sorry.
It's alright, I'm already nearly through the entire Wood Elf Lord roster. I'm just talking about the Ancient Treeman. He's not good, is he? I don't bring him. Would you bring him? I wouldn't bring him.
You have Durthu.
Yeah. If you're going for some sort of like blob formation or like some sort of box, I'm not sure why you'd go box. Maybe against like vampire counts, I could see. Maybe, or against like Beastmen, maybe. I think Durthu is a pick that you can bring. I think because he still summons Manticores as well, doesn't he? Yeah, he still summons Manticores, which are just better than Eagles. Because if you're choosing any other version of Beast Magic, you're not getting Manticores, you're getting Eagles. Like if you look at the Spellslinger, she summons Eagles, not Manticores. Durthu is the only guy left in the Wood Elf roster that summons Manticores. So if you're going to bring Beast Magic for some reason, say you just want to cause some terror, you always bring Durthu. His disability, I've never got anything out of this. This never hits. I never use this because it doesn't ever seem to hit what I want it to hit ever. So I never use it. And this is just much more reliable if you want to do a big AoE effect. Especially when you stack it with like Flock of Doom, you can start to really grind down. You can like do Mortis Engine effects pretty much with the Sword of Death plus their Flock of Doom. Yeah, that is pretty much what Durthu is. He's just a Mortis Engine that's really big and armoured and can summon a Manticore. When you bring him Flock of Doom in his item, that's all he is at the end of the day. So if you're going for some sort of like box formation, that's what you do.
Alexis points out that in special accounts you can bring Durthu as blobs.
And because Treeman blob. Throw some healing in as well for him, probably I'd recommend like a life caster. Waystalker. It's your sniping lord. Classic, what Wood Elves are known for. I think you nearly see one of these in every Wood Elf army. I can't remember last time I went up against a Wood Elf army that didn't have at least one Waystalker. Why is that, Lycus?
I think they're getting less common though, but...
I'd agree with that.
But it's still... You use it for the Arrows of Kurnos, which are basically a long, like 600 meter sniping tool that you can kill artillery pieces with.
Kill artillery typecasters.
Yeah, if you strip them down, or bring like 2 of them and strip them down to just the Arrows of Kurnos, you still got like magic long-range firepower for like decent price that you can... They have stock, they don't have snipe, I think, or do they?
Oh, they do have snipe, yeah.
They do have snipe, so you basically have like long-range Lord or Hero or single entity monster killing hero.
Yeah. They don't have armor piercing, but it'll stack up the damage, especially things Arrows of Kurnos are armor piercing.
They have like you think their combat stats are actually not that bad, but they somehow do horribly in combat.
I think they just don't have the health or the armor for it, really, even though their combat stats aren't terrible. Or anything good. Yeah, they're terrible. Oh yeah, one thing to note is nearly everything in the Wood Elf roster has magical damage. So if you're just don't bring anything with physical resistance against. If anything, you might want to bring like your own magic damage against Wood Elves, but never bring something with physical resistance against Wood Elves. There is a couple Wood Elf units that have their own physical resistance, so it's a pretty good idea to bring some form of magical damage, but don't bring it in the form of an ethereal unit. Ethereal units will get completely destroyed by Wood Elf roster. I'd say about half their roster does magical damage. safe to assume that
Yeah,
if
probably.
you bring anything ethereal, it's going to die.
Like all the tree men, all the tree units.
Yeah, all tree
the-
units,
Like
more
some of the
dancers.
ranged units, it's
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
that's it.
It's quite a few. Now, the Glade Captain, I used it once when it came out. I haven't used it since.
I don't have anything to add. That pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, it feels so. This feels so similar to Waystalkers that I don't see a reason in it existing ever.
Like,
It's like you gave a Waystalker a spear.
Yeah,
and
you
that's
have
it.
a weird hybrid lord again, or hybrid hero in this case, that like is good in melee and is good at ranged, but like can't do like from a cost efficiency perspective. You just bring like either the like melee guy or the ranged guy.
Yeah.
You don't bring the hybrid because
Not to mention they're
Yeah.
more expensive. Like, if anything, I feel like the Glade Captain should be less expensive than the Waystalker, which is more specialized.
they have their mounts, which are like probably decent, but
Yeah, that is the difference between them and the Waystalkers, that you can put them on mounts, I suppose, but you sacrifice the ranged ability, the ranged advantage on that, and it's usually not worth it because of just the insane range that both of them have. You don't need the mobility. You're going to be in range, like, no matter where you're standing on the map most times.
yeah, potato physical resistance counts on ranged as well, like any damage that's coming in.
Yeah.
But as Alexis pointed out, they also have physical, like magic damage on range, so
Yeah, these ones do.
can't win
especially.
with physical resistance against whatevs.
Hmm. But yeah,
Which is also why they're shit against dwarves.
yeah, because everything takes just less damage. But yeah,
Okay.
I don't see these being good. Don't bring them. Not good.
Caster,
Yeah, your typical casters, you're always going to want to put them on a horse because, of course, you want to put them on a horse so they can run away faster. Yeah, I think you're always bringing life caster, aren't you? If not a life caster, you're bringing the branch wraith, which also should also note on this group as well is basically a mini Drycher that gets access to Earthblood. That's the main thing. That's the main spell to note is Earthblood. I mean, you can also its Pendulum is also sometimes useful. These are two pretty good spells to bring on a caster, and they're a halfway decent melee lord. Unfortunately, the mistake that's made sometimes is they think Branch Wraith is good, really good in melee. It's not, and it is still your caster. You probably don't want to be throwing your caster into a melee situation, so you can often lose out on that sort of melee advantage that they get. Typically, you just want to bring a caster on a horse so that you can run away with your caster instead of throwing it into a melee fight, which it's probably going to lose because it's still a caster.
the thing to note about Wood of Casters is you have the access to the Law of Beasts, but I guess most of you will know this, but you will not summon a Manticore.
No.
You will instead summon a Great Eagle, which is just like in every aspect a worse
It's
unit
worse.
than the Manticore.
If
Doesn't
you-
cost terror,
It
is
costs
even
less.
like easier to kill.
Well, it does cost less now.
Right.
I thought they didn't cost less. I always thought they had the same cost. It does actually cost 4 Winter Magic less. That's not
Okay,
worth
so
it still,
they
though.
cost less. It's still shit.
Yeah, it's still terrible. If you want to bring Beast Magic, you bring Durthu. There you go.
It has a fun animation when it enters the battle, but that's
Yeah, it's
all.
like, oh wow, it came from the sky. Yeah, that's it. For some reason, the mana
Yeah,
cost still
pretty
comes from the
much.
ground.
The Law of Beast was the Law of Manticore summoning. Maybe like you throw in an Ember Spear against dwarves, so you throw in like Flock of Doom
Yeah.
against like lowly armored factions.
It's
but
not Law of
that's-
Beast, it's Law of Flock of Doom and Manticore Summon. And they took away Manticore Summon from half the elf roster. So it's kind of a shame. You usually are just bringing beasts to bring Manticore Summons.
Okay,
Big
there we go.
old butterfly caster got nerfed recently, not unbreakable anymore. Now she runs away just like everybody else. What else happened to her? She didn't just lose unbreakable.
She got mass increases, so she doesn't fly around like a butterfly, I guess.
Did she lose some
Um,
resistance as well? I think she had more something resistance.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I thought you only got the mass increase, got unbreakable removed, and I think got a cost adjustment.
Might have done, yeah. She's definitely squishier, basically. And she runs away. And if she starts running away, I doubt there's anything that's going to stop her from running away.
But she causes terror, as most people in the Warhammer world are afraid of a giant butterfly. apparently.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Truly staggering proportions. She gets her own caster thing, Wrath of the Woods. I don't think it's that good. I don't know. I guess you could bring it if you want to. I don't know. I don't bring Ariel that often.
I guess you could cut it. I used to run her in a meme build, which was with Orion together, just for like, okay, Lord of Lady of the Woods, and I basically took everything off except for Sorcerer. Maybe Apotheosis.
Yeah,
I
that
think
is. Yeah.
Her very wide ability, her abilities are decent. I would just take them off from a cost perspective, except for maybe the heal, because the heal is just like
Heal the
pretty good.
heals. Yeah. Great
Mage,
arcane
like
weapons was
the,
good.
whatever the one left is. Yep, that's probably the kit I would take. And the items, she has a huge amount of like the Blessing of the Ancients, as all would have casters. If they are in the forest, they get a buff to magic
Yeah,
resistance.
so if you have a lot of
magic
forests,
regeneration.
take it. But if you don't intend on making a mental note that I should have my caster in the forests, then don't take it.
It's pretty cheap, so it isn't the worst. Okay, abilities. I
Items
think
even.
this one, the Dart of Doom, is pretty shit.
Yeah.
Like, from facing it. I think the next one is rather
Hickle to
good.
the ages.
Yeah. Just it's what this it's spell
It's-
called. It's just
it's a-
debuff,
yeah.
speed debuff.
It's a more explosive Awakening of the Woods, which is really
Yeah,
weird.
that
Why did she get this? Why did she get 3 items? Loki only gets 1. Who gave her 3? And they're all terrible. Like Berry
Yeah, Echo
Wine.
of the Ages, sometimes maybe. Berry Wine is actually, I think,
Berry Wine is pretty
basically
good.
free regrowth.
It's a regrowth. Yeah, it's a free regrowth, but it's like I should just be bringing our life caster instead.
Yes, and it costs like almost 200 for
For
basically
for
one
one.
regrowth, which is
Considering that's like the same price as regrowth, but you don't have to spend Winds of Magic, I guess. Like you can spend more Soul Stealer, but she's going to be hitting her own healing cap really quickly because she has Soul Stealer. That's the main reason you usually bring her as Soul Stealer. She also gets Tempest, which is the other. I don't think you can get any. Oh, you can get it in the high department, but that's only in a Lord
Yep.
as well. So maybe you want Tempest. That's why you bring Ariel. You want Tempest and Soul Stealer. That's it. And she's kind of hard to kill. She's actually like decent in melee. But typically that's it. Is that about
Okay.
right? Yeah.
yeah, pretty much. I don't think anything to add. Like she's fun. She's like fun and meme builds together with Orion, and like not completely memeish, but
Yeah, not completely memeish, but she's definitely. She wasn't like the powerhouse I think she used to be. That everyone thought she was at least.
yeah, she would just survive until the end because Orion unbreakable. She was unbreakable. Orion had his regeneration and his insane damage resistance, and she would just like heal
Soul
through
Stealer
everything to
and
soul
heal
stealers,
everything.
and
Yeah.
they would win the blob fights. Even though you get hit by army losses, they would just win.
Keep fighting.
But
Eternal
now
Guard.
she can't do it anymore.
Also talking about the shielded and the RR variant. May as well do them all at once. I don't think you bring the unshielded variant ever. Maybe you do. No, I don't think you do. Do you?
No,
Yeah.
even against vampires, you want the melee defense. So
Yeah, you just it's like a full 8 melee defense, and you're getting a silver shield. It's not even like a spearman variant. It's like you're getting a full silver shield, which makes them pretty obsolete to ranged attacks. It's your typical holding front line as opposed to a damage dealing front line. I can't think of the exact word to use, but you pretty much bring like Dryads when you're trying to cut through the front line, and you bring Eternal Guard when you're trying to hold the front line. So if you're going for more of like a skirmish build, you just bring some Eternal Guard. You do your skirmishing while your Eternal Guard just sort of sit there. They don't even engage, they just sit there until something actually comes to attack them, while your skirmishing does all the work. The ROR is like, I have some money left over. It's not quite the same level as Sigmar Sons because I don't know why, but they're just not in the same place as they should be. It's like, I have some money left over, better upgrade my Eternal Guard to win a Heart Guard situation.
yeah, logic. I was trying to point. I was going to point out, but logic is right. The Eternal Guard is basically the only basic spear unit that you can have that is also armor piercing.
Mhm.
I mean, most of the people hopefully now know this, but like armor piercing on that basic unit, it allows them to actually like deal damage to something like Empire Knights. Empire Knights get into their backline. No spear unit is gonna poke through 110 armor, not in a reasonable time frame. But the Eternal Guard will, because like see that 20 armor piercing damage out of 24. That's insane.
That's
the
a lot.
ratio. It makes them incredibly good.
Yeah, very good.
Also, the RR version of the Eternal Guard, I think, is unbreakable.
Yeah, it's unbreakable, and
So
it
basically,
has encouraged as
against
well.
counts you. Yeah. Also, I feel like Dryads just don't perform that good for me. Like, I know they are really good at.
Don't like
fashion.
Dryads. You don't like
They're
using
good against Skaven,
Dryads.
but like Skaven just bring a poison with mortar or poison with clobadiers and just kill the Dryads.
I'd bring them
Or
against Skaven, against Greenskins, maybe even against Norska, definitely against
Just-
Coast.
Yeah,
That's where they shine.
Apparently they do good, but I
don't believe
just see them. Yeah, they do damage, but they just take damage so quickly that
Yeah, they're basically like that typical category of damage dealer, like Forsaken, like Flagellants, die quick, but they do dish out quite a fair bit of damage quite quickly. And it should also be noted that Dryads are immune to psychology, so you tend to notice they don't run like that often at all. They hold for quite a long time. Actually, this kind of goes for all the Wood Elf stuff. It's all very high leadership stuff. Apart from like the Glade Riders with spears, everything's going to hold for a really long time.
Except if you bring like cheap non-armor piercing ranged fire.
Those will run. Yeah. Everything else
Wood
holds.
Elves are apparently really shitty at taking archer fire, which is
awkward that, isn't it? Because they never really.
Okay. Anyway, Dryads.
Yeah, Dryads. Kind of already touched on them. Yeah, the Dryads, damage dealer. Your typical damage dealer infantry. You make your decision at the start of your building. Do I want to hold the line, or do I want to chew through some chaff and get into whatever's behind there? So it depends on the faction you're facing, which one you bring in as a front line.
Tree Spirit causes magic damage.
Yeah,
Don't bring magic resistance against Wood Elves. And they also have physical resistance because tree spirits.
Yeah, spirit, tree, physical resistance. It all adds up. The ROR of the Dryads has the frostbite effect. Yeah.
Is there maybe archers don't run away as fast, but.
Oh, also has frenzy as well, so actually he's going to be cleaving through stuff a lot easier. Yeah, another one of those situations where you think, I have some money left over. I'm going to bring the upgraded Dryad version. It's not something you start with. It's just something that you go and think, okay, sure, why not? It's extra. It's more. I'm feeling generous. They also look cool. They also sound cool. Why not?
Willow has a heart for trees, apparently.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I like these. I like this unit. They're
War
cool.
Dancers. Maybe cover both of the War Dancers, since they're...
Spear and not spear.
Yeah, you can also throw in the Blade Dancers, probably. Like Blade Singers.
Yeah, Blade Singers, yeah. May as well just do the wild. How about we just go through it in a normal way? Yeah, probably. Yeah, so War Dancers are very similar to Dryads. They're just more expensive. They also have this ability. I've always been so confused about the abilities that the War Dancers have. I never seem to find a good time to press them. Like, I definitely see their situation. Like, obviously the Blade Singer one is kind of obvious. It's when you're fighting melee, when you're fighting something with more armor and such. But like this one just gives you missile resistance. But I never seem to see a reason. Like, I might accidentally press it when they're in melee.
I think that's actually better than the other one.
Yeah, this one is just strange.
If you get shot at, it survives. Like, you can charge in a lot longer. But this one is just like, okay, they survive longer, but you don't want them to survive.
Yeah, because it's a damage dealer. Why do I want my damage dealer to have less melee attack? That's not what I want. It's not a holding unit. Although it does have 38 melee defense, so maybe you're trying to make it into a holding unit for some reason. But yeah, War Dancers, they always feel a bit off in the Wood Elf roster for me. They never seem to do anything.
They die to archers.
Yeah.
Really. Like, I mean, they're half-naked ladies. They die to archers.
They have no miss resistance. They have just a bit of physical resistance. That's basically all that's protecting them.
Yeah,
same goes for Blade Singers, same goes to War Dancers and Spear.
The Azure Spear War Dancers are nice because they like survive longer against like archers than the other ones.
Yeah, they have that. They can pop. And they're also like, because touching on the Eternal Guard spheres, they are quite slow, so they tend to not be able to catch much of that stuff that they want to be doing. But War Dancers are typically... War Dancers and Azure Spear are going after those big armoured monsters, and with 46 speed, they can usually catch them as well.
Yeah, Venu, that's pretty much what Alexis has been complaining about since the start of Wood Elves, that all Wood Elf Elite Infantry is basically, you just take the basic variants, because the Elite Infantry is too squishy for their costs most of the time, and they just die to Archer Fire, which, okay, well...
Yeah.
So you normally just go with like Dryads or
Eternal
Guard, and that's the only infantry you see.
Yeah, you don't see these three. You can see the ROR Wildwood Rangers sometimes, because they're actually okay, and they don't die to Archer Fire. Touching on the Wildwood Rangers briefly, again, they sort of just die to Archer Fire, don't they?
I think they get a bonus versus large in the first.
They do, but that's kind of awkward. Like,
and charge defense or something?
Yeah, and charge defense versus large. They basically become like halberds in the forest.
Okay, so just only engage the enemy in the forest and you win.
Yeah, if it's large. If it's not large, it has zero effect.
Oh yeah, then well then.
And they're not that good in melee.
Also, don't fight in the forest as Wood Elves. You think it's a good idea, but it's actually horrible because you rely on your archers, and your archers don't do damage in the forest.
Yeah, they do now with the shooting through the forest.
Even with the thing, I don't.
Usually, you want to be shooting out of the forest. You want to be shooting like from the forest to the outside.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the ideal situation.
If your enemy engages you on the edge of a forest, I think he deserves to lose.
Yeah.
If you would have.
Yeah, he's just been done. Yeah, I've never seen. I think you bring Wildwood Rangers against dwarves. And that's it. Maybe again. No, not against them. Again, no. Yeah, just dwarves.
Yeah, I think dwarves is actually decent, but.
And that's I mean, even then, I'm like, maybe against Tomb Kings now because like, yeah, you just don't bring any of the elite. The only exception to talk about, I think, is the ones of Thithil because those are like good. And they don't die to archer fire like everything else in the Wood Elf roster does.
What's the difference that they get from?
They get their silver shield. That's like quite a difference actually. They can basically become like anti-large. They get a silver shield, and they get armor sundering, and like huge buff to stats. And Vanguard deployment for some reason.
That's the infantry that's not gonna get killed by missiles because it gets silver shields.
Yeah.
Except for the Eternal Guards, which like the most basic infantry.
Which is the basic infantry, yeah. And even though these say they're anti-large, they do pretty good against infantry because they have 59 melee attack, which is pretty big for a spear infantry. It says spear infantry, but I don't think there's any spear infantry that has more melee attack than melee defense, apart from this one. So these are pretty good, but it's like this is your only infantry unit that's like elite, more or less. Like low extractors. What do these do again? Oh yeah, they have stalk, because you need that on a spear unit.
I mean, they don't have stalk. They have an activate.
They have an activate ability that has stalk, and it's also unspottable. Maybe you could sneak up on a monster that's going to run away from you instantly as soon as it spots you. But okay. Yeah, it's not.
I'll keep that in mind whenever I face a monster that will run away from.
Yeah, instantly. Yeah. They also get their Storm of Blades ability instead of the better missile resist. These are a downgrade of anything from the regular Azrai spears. Because they don't have their missile resistance. They get the worse Blade Singer ability instead. Actually, they gain melee attack instead of defense in this situation.
No, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite.
The normal war dancers, but they also die like then even more.
Yeah, because basically that makes them good against infantry as well because they already have like a huge bonus versus large from their weapon strength. But yeah,
okay.
Not much to talk about in the infantry of Wood Elves.
It's getting depressing.
Yeah, let's talk about whether Wood Elves are actually decent. Glade Guard. Oh, wait, you don't bring these.
Honestly, I think they're just like, yeah, you bring normally Waywatchers, which will we come to in a second, but like against, for example, Skaven having like one or two of the fire arrows, I think is decent.
I think the other variants
poison damage,
yeah,
which I think is just hugely overpriced on the late.
Yeah, it's an extra 100 gold just for it's magical damage as well as poison, but
yeah, okay. So also magic damage, don't bring against dwarves, but also more magic damage.
This one does fire damage and armor piercing, so do bring it against dwarves.
Yes, because I like the fire variant because it has fire damage against like regenerating factions, as like any fire damage is. It's awesome, and also it is armor piercing. And most people, or at least in my experience, most people don't know that that's armor piercing. I mean, the better players will know, but like most people that you will meet regularly don't know this, and you just watch a Shaggoth getting killed or
get destroyed by armor piercing missiles. Yeah.
By like 650 cheap archers. They're basically cheap, that's it.
Yeah, they're cheap, but even then they're like more expensive. They don't have the same like volume of fire as other cheap archers, like peasant archers or anything. I think it's because they have less models, but they never seem to do as much and they're more expensive. Typically the archer fire isn't coming from these three, in my experience. It's coming from the next ones.
They also have a very tight formation, which is unusual for Wood Elves. It means you take more fire from enemy archers. Like basically, High Elf archers absolutely shed on every of the Wood Elf, most of the Wood Elf archers, and all of the basic archers.
Moving on to Deepwood Scouts, the two variants. These are basically just like 360 Glade Guard, which doesn't sound that good, but when you consider the skirmishing is all about Wood Elves, this is pretty good. Especially when the Swift Shiver Shards I've seen used quite a bit. They have like way more missile strength, nearly. What is it? Was that extra 2/3?
That's like a 2/3 more.
Yeah, which definitely does do a lot of damage. They have less range, but typically you're protecting them, so it's even if something comes into range, you can usually protect it with some sort of cavalry. When you stack like 3 units of these, anything that isn't armored is going to get completely destroyed by a volley of these 3. So this is a typical like ranged core you might see. You can also just see regular ones as well if you're really worried about that range disadvantage. Or you don't need the magic damage as much, because it's 150 difference, but it's a huge amount of damage difference on paper. So typically,
do the most against heavily armored.
Yeah, against heavily armored, you bring the Waywatchers. That's what the Waywatchers are for. They're pretty much the armor piercing versions of these things, more or less.
Waywatchers. Go to unit if you want. Like if you go for a ranged build, normally you see 2 or 3 Way Watchers.
Yeah, 2 or 3 Way
100
Watchers. I think nearly in
100
every Wood
meter
Elf armor
range.
you might see that. If you're going like not rushed against like Vampire Coast or something, you'll bring. Even then, you might want to bring some Way Watchers to deal with crabs and the likes. It's your armor piercing missile, pretty much.
They have snipe, do they?
Nope. I think there's the
no, they
armor.
don't have
No,
snipe. Okay, they have stalk.
They have stalk. Whatever their ability
Pretty
is.
much spread out formation. Don't take too much counter-fire because spread out formation, and also they disappear normally when they're out of range again. Yeah, just like combined really good with the Glady, like the female Glade Lord, and I think the sisters.
Yeah, they can merge
Because-
quite well with that.
Yep.
Because you
Female
can
Glade Lord,
Prayer of Valor 3, yeah. And also, I think, provides a buff to nearby. Yeah, a very small 10% map base missile. That's nothing to Way Watchers because they're armor piercing. But yeah, you net something down with Prayer of Valor 3, it takes 22% extra damage from Way Watchers. You fire like three volleys of Way Watchers at it, and then it dies. Doesn't really matter what it is. Even if it's like a shielded unit, when you're dropping that shield down a level, you just kill whatever it is with Way Watchers. That's why Way Watchers were used so much before the DLC came out. It was the must-have unit in nearly every Wood Elf roster. Beforehand, it was just Way Watchers. It still kind of is. The ROR gets Smoke Bomb. And Discourage on the shot. I don't see much use anywhere.
They killed some goblins, they got smoke bombs. If your Way Watchers get charged by artillery, by cavalry, you're doing something wrong anyway.
Yeah, and because of how big the unit, how like spread out the unit is, the smoke bomb actually only covers like a very small area. So chances are you're probably already engaged in melee if it's in range. Like, I'm pretty sure the unit itself is like 20 meters wide. Even if you're like yeah, because you're usually stretching out the most, so it's like 20 meters wide. And then it's not good. Don't bring these. This isn't a situation.
Basically, situation. If you have the money left over and have nothing better to upgrade,
then Chevron upgrades at Way Watchers instead. Don't bring these. Don't. Actually, no, don't.
Oh, okay, cavalry.
Glade Riders are spears. It's hounds. Yeah, it's hounds. They're basically hounds. Just think of them as hounds. You'll be fine.
Yeah, basically 2 units, always nice. Especially against Skaven, even though they lose to Wolf Rats, they're just like such a
annoying thing. Yeah, you want to chase down some skirmish cav, bring these. You want to chase off some routed units, you bring these. You want to flank around and be annoying, you use these. There you go. That's what you bring them for. The hounds with the bronze shield. But then again, most hounds usually have a missile resistance, so yeah, they're hounds. Wild Riders.
I would say one of the most cost-efficient cavalries in the game. Like, they have a huge charge bonus. They have like semi-decent combat stats, maybe a little bit low on the melee defense, but
yeah, better when you bring a shielded variant. I think should we just say we always bring the shielded variant? I think that's always the case.
Yeah, 90% of the case.
Yeah, I don't think there's I think 100 gold is always worth it just to bring the six extra melee defense on them and the silver shield.
Also, again, physical resistance. The Wood Elves always have magic damage and physical resistance, which is why you should maybe bring some magic damage yourself.
There isn't a
They
thing.
also cause fear for some reason, which I guess giant stacks are.
Yeah,
dangerous.
some reason. Yeah, it's strange. Don't know why.
And they also get frenzy, so their combat stats in combat will be a lot better than they are here.
Yeah, especially when you throw in the charge bonus as well. Yeah, they are a shock cav though, so typically you don't want to leave them in melee too long. They're very much a damage dealing cav. They're gonna run over whatever they're hitting. If they don't run it over instantly, they're gonna die.
Yaveneth, I've seen like spears lose to wolf rats.
Yeah, because everyone forgets that rats are.
I guess it's maybe sometimes who gets the charge or who gets the better charge of, or like who has taken like some kind of range damage in the back, but they don't.
Yeah, I think it's most of the time it is going to be the wolf rat, but if you throw in the poison variant of the wolf rats, they're definitely going to win. They're going to win nearly every time. But typically you are bringing the magic damage because it's what else?
It's still worth bringing like 2 units, but against Skaven I would say definitely at least 2 units.
Yeah.
But
okay,
Wild
Riders do really good. Great Stag Knights, yay. Wait, these aren't good. Are they? They're like Demigryph Knights, but... Yeah, against dwarves? Yeah, no, I think they just get shot.
Yeah, but... I mean, before you had no armor-piercing cavalry. If you desperately need armor-piercing cavalry, you have it here.
There is a nice fun build. You can bring like a Ryan and then like buff up their charge bonus with Horn over the Wild Hunt.
Yeah, but you can also do that with Wild Riders.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think these are that good.
If you mix them in with Spear Riders, maybe they take less damage, but they have
mix
low
them
model
in.
count as Demigryph Knights, so you need Law of Life and Regrowth.
Yeah, and they're very expensive as well.
Yeah, and they're really expensive, but still, like, if you're desperate, you need Armor Piercing Cave.
Yeah, if you desperately need it. The ROR, Wild Hunters of Kurnos, might just be the always add unit for Woodelves, maybe? Am I right there?
They used to be, but like after the patch, I don't think I've seen them again.
Yeah, I haven't
They
seen them.
basically get an anti-large bonus, which is...
Yeah, they get magic damage and anti-large.
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. That's the only difference there. That actually does make all the... How much anti versus large is it? 13. Yeah, so they're pretty good. These are a pretty good unit. I'd say you want these in nearly every situation. I'd say there's just like... If you're expecting lots of infantry, don't bring them, but I think nearly in every situation we want to bring these.
Patch, so that's...
Yeah, but just because you don't see them doesn't mean they're not good.
Okay, so what was added with the latest patch? They got the Sisters, they got the Stag Knights, they got the Glade Captain, the Spear Riders, of course.
Spear Riders, yeah, Zotes.
Those, yeah, which we will get to
in a second. Yeah, but yeah, I think these are nearly all the time you want to bring one of this unit. It's almost level the Sigmar Suns, almost. It's
also,
not like
you're right. Blade Singers.
Blade Slingers.
Okay. Ethereal Stag Knights.
Basically,
First off,
yeah. You go first. You go first.
Don't bring them against Skaven.
I like have to mention that.
Yeah, I don't like they. Okay, they are ethereal. They get a physical resistance of, as all ethereal units do. They cost terror. They still rout because they are not undead. And Willow, do they have anything else? Sorry.
I believe it's the. I think they, yeah, that's. Oh, they get Strider as well because they're ethereal, but they're not undead. Yeah, they get Strider. That's it. Well, actually, they have a worse shield. No, they don't. They have the same shield. No armor.
They're better than the Great Stag Knights because they survive longer, because they don't have armor, they instead have physical resistance. So if you expect magic damage, don't bring them. And especially don't bring them against Skaven.
Yeah, as with all ethereal units, keep these away from magical damage, pretty much.
Skaven have so much magic damage, and you think like causing terror is always nice. Yeah, against Skaven, yes. And then you see like one poison and Globadiers deleting your entire unit. Yeah,
doing terror against Skaven is nice, but it's not so good when you're pouring 2,000 gold into a unit that dies in seconds.
Yeah, ask Hughes how much value they got in the game that he did against me. I think it was 194. But like even wolf threats do decent damage against them.
Yeah, because they're just magic damage and they don't have the best melee defense. Like 38 is not that good, especially when it's only in 24 models. They are... If there's no magical damage, they're amazing. Like, just keep running them through and all of a sudden you've got a shot cav that's very hard to kill. But it's assuming they don't have the magic damage. If they don't have magic damage, you bring these. If you think the enemy's not going to bring any magical damage for whatever reason, I think you always want to bring these.
Maybe against like Coast. I mean, you don't need a terror against.
Yeah,
Coast,
I think they're against Coast. Yeah, but I think just because of how hard they are to kill for Coast, I think Coast literally, the build you always bring the I'm going to look at this briefly. You bring the Law of the Deeps just with that spell, just so you can do magic damage to those things. I have seen that because they are very annoying to deal with otherwise.
So you see, like, they have really nice matchups. They're basically a buffed up version of the Great Stag Knights, a good version of the Great Stag Knights.
Yeah, good version. Buffed up implies it was good before. It's savage, I know, but then, yeah.
But if you have any magic damage.
Yeah, basically bring them if you're not expecting magic damage. On to Missile Cav of all variants, mainly starting with Glade Riders. You put Glade Guards on a horse. And you gave him 360 fire.
You get worse shot. Actually, what we forgot to mention, Glade Guard got firewalls moving, which is not useful because they only have like the normal shooting arch.
Yeah, because if you put them on fire at will, they're probably gonna fire at the shielded front line first. So, and you can't really have them fire and move. I guess it means they shoot a little quicker. They don't have to get in position, but before they fire. But that's about all you're getting out of the firewall moving part of it.
Okay, sorry, Glide Riders.
Yeah, 360. It's just skirmish cav. It's your average cheap skirmish cav. This one that deals poison is even better because dealing poison on a skirmish cav is really good. But yeah.
Personally, I feel they're overpriced. Like
they are
the normal
overpriced.
version is overpriced because you get if you don't have the mobility advantage and can't control the engagements, you basically lost as the Wood Elves.
Yeah.
So you might as well just go for Deepwood Scouts.
Yeah, you just go with Deepwood Scouts Swift Shot. They do so much more damage. In exchange, these are just more like utility, but you want the damage way more. You also get more ammo with these things. So you just bring Deepwood Shift Silver Swords or just regular Deepwood Scouts, and it's way better.
Yeah, but that's about how Venus just wants to point out that this basically has been missile versus non-missile factions, that all your elite infantry are far too squishy.
Yeah. What else sad? It is pretty sad for the old Wood Elves. They got better. I mean, they're not the worst faction in the game anymore, but they're not the best.
Oh, I would say they're A tier, but
You think they're A tier? I think they're. Actually, I really hate Wood Elves, so I can't say. I think they're really annoying.
I would say they're A tier.
I feel like you've reached a point
okay,
with Wood Elves that you
Before we
really
get into a
like.
meta discussion with Willow,
Yeah, I'm gonna have a fight. I'm gonna stab someone. Hawk Riders. I played a game the other day. It was 3 Hawk Riders and the Sisters on a Dragon. It was the most annoying game I ever played. It was terrible. Anyway,
Yeah.
Hawk Riders.
If you want to make your opponent rage quit, take Hawk Riders.
Yeah. It was terrible as well because I had my caster on. My lord was on a horse and he just got surrounded by Hawk Riders and killed. And then he just sniped on my entire army. It was terrible.
Yeah, that's about how Hawk Riders work. 360 shooting arc. They don't do terribly good missile damage, but they just like kill lords. They basically make to lord snipe,
Yeah.
which I think.
Because when you
is why I hate
surround
those units.
when you surround a Blood Dragon Lord on a horse on a Pegasus with these things, he dies. Just because he can't swing in all directions at once. They're surprisingly good in melee things. They have armor piercing and decent stats.
In general, they're not the best unit in the Order Frost.
They have a good charge bonus though.
Yeah, but still, like, they're not really the best.
No, they're not. They're just annoying. Sisters of the Thorn. Man, I have not seen these ever. Moving on. Eagle.
They get some bound spells.
The
they
worst
have a
ones.
range-
Like, this is terrible. That's okay, but this is terrible. Curse of Anathema, who wants that? It's only 1 charge as well.
I think you see them sometimes in a Vampire Counts blob. If you blob up with Treekin or Durthu and some Eternal Guard, you sometimes see, like, I think 1 or 2 sisters.
I think you just bring Hawk Riders instead there. Probably the better.
I mean, it
idea.
was before patch.
Yeah, these are just too expensive. They're too bad. And they don't do any damage. Not good. Don't bring those. Eagle.
It's an eagle.
Yeah.
Flies.
That's it. Any questions?
I think you see, like, the Great Eagle was comically bad. I think you see them sometimes used to tie up a ranged unit as, like, a discount Manticore. When you
Yeah,
can't
it
take
is
Manticore.
literally just that. It's a discount Manticore. It's a
But-
worse Manticore.
It's
I
way
wish-
worse Manticore.
I wish there was
and-
something special about Great Eagles, like anything special, because they're just worse, way worse Manticores, in every way. I wish there was just something a little special about them. I don't know what, just anything that made them somewhat on level with Manticores, because they're just worse Manticores.
Yeah, okay, I think just, like, move on.
They're worse Manticores. They're bad. Don't bring these. Trick it.
Also, they're forest spirits, but don't get magic damage.
Oh yeah, another Force Stalker. Treekin.
They are trees, and
Could
they
be
have missile and
Good
physical
to buff into the front line, maybe, to help with like Eternal Guard, because Eternal Guard aren't really anti-infantry. The Treekin can sort of function as like a Ushabti sort of thing.
They don't do damage.
They don't, but they last so long that it's like they're basically doing damage to their soul.
Okay, yeah, as you pointed out, like, Treekin will hold forever. Like, you don't need anti-arch against Treekins, you need armor piercing, so great
Yeah.
weapons. I think Zerg pointed this out like a couple of times in Warhammer 1, which he's absolutely right. If, like, I mean, they're good in campaign.
Yeah, it says it all you need to
because
say.
AI is, like, not flanking, but, like, they will hold until the day of the awakening or whatever.
Yeah, they have a ton of health for 12 models. That is a lot of health. 6,500 is a lot of health for 12 models. And they're tanky.
They will never do damage. Like, they can survive until the end of the fight and lose 2 army losses, but they will have acquired 200 gold of value.
Yeah, more or less. They're a holding unit. ROR is pretty much the same, except for it's just got buffed up stats, so it actually does something. And it has a
Yeah,
bit of flame resistance.
It
Actually,
has
a lot
bit,
of
I
fire
think,
resistance.
70% of flame with
Yeah,
fire
plus and it
barrier.
applies also 25%, which, considering how much of fire weakness there is for the Widow Froster, these can definitely have their place. if you're really expecting a lot of fire damage.
Yeah, that's basically it. Like when I've pointed out, Tricon are basically like you have a mobile wall that you take with you.
Yeah, you have a I'd say brick wall. It's not. It's a wooden wall that you're ramming into something and leaving it there for a bit. This one just happens to be on fire.
I like bringing like one unit or the RR version to just basically throw my opponents off. But
yeah, I don't often see just a Tricon unit. I typically just see the fireback elders on their own. I think that's the first thing you do. You usually go fireback elders and then you think, do I want another unit of Tricon? And then you think, no, I don't, so I just bring these.
So in this case, RR is better than the normal version, but still...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those bring the RR first situations.
Okay, apparently you pointed out that RR also gives fire resistance around...
It does, yeah, with its ability here. The Wildfire Aura provides 25% to all allies within 30 meters. Which is why I was saying it covers that fire weakness area sometimes.
Okay, so Tree Man.
Tree Man bad. Everyone...
You bring a Tree Lord without spells, and that makes him useless. And then you have this. You have a giant, like giants laugh about Tree Men, probably.
Yeah, they're just not good. I don't see. They're so out of place in the Wood Elf roster. They're not quick. They're not very utility. They're not anything. Don't bring them.
Yep. This is everything you can say about them.
Zoats. These are interesting. I like these. I like the idea of these, but they don't seem to fit into the Wood Elf roster all too much. They have their place. They are... Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Maybe Empire.
I think they get shot too much in Empire.
They also got like 2 bone spells, which are what is it, Earthblood again?
Yeah, Earthblood and Flesh to Stone. Always make sure to pop that Flesh to Stone if you're running into something that isn't armor piercing. It's why it's so good against Bretonnia. Like Bretonnia had to start bringing Questing Knights against Wood Elves just to deal with these things because these beat Knights of the Realm quite nicely. You put Flesh to Stone on yourself, you run these into Knight of the Realm, and then all of a sudden you're winning. Which definitely catches Bretonnia off guard sometimes.
I think they used to be built early against Beastmen or your broad zones, but I don't know if that's the common because Beastmen are this.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe against Counts? Can I see them against Counts? Why are they not used against Counts?
Probably because Blood Knights eat them for
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, moving on. May as well talk about the ROR as well. They're just a beefier version, and instead of Earthblood, they get... oh, actually, did they get 2 charges of Flesh to Stone? They already did, never mind. Yeah, basically, instead of Earthblood, they get Regrowth. Which is... okay. I mean, it seems you get 2 Earthbloods for free.
They're anti-large.
Yeah, they are.
Non-armor piercing. They are also armor piercing.
Yeah, armor piercing anti-large.
Okay, so you meant what's their like? Okay, yeah, they do really good against like non-armor piercing cavalry.
Yeah, basically, yeah, because you pop Flesh to Stone on yourself, and then all of a sudden they don't take any damage. Because they get up to like 120 armor, which is a huge amount.
Still, 60 armor is pretty low for like that price pool.
These are Dragon Ogres with some bound spells and magic damage. That's mainly it. Who is this? It's Psycho.
Welcome, Psycho.
We're on the last unit. You're just in time to join us.
Yeah.
Just in time. But yeah, Zoats. That's it from Zoats. They're nice. I like them, but I don't feel like they suit into the Wood Elf roster very well.
They're also pretty slow, which is not good for Wood Elf.
Yeah. Not great. But okay, definitely have their uses in certain matchups where you're expecting some non-armor piercing that are also armored large. It's very situational, but you know, it exists.
Put the matchup from Bretonnia from basically borderline unbeatable to decent.
Yeah.
Also, Ted cries about them.
Yeah, he
cries like every night. Cries about having to.
Cries in his sleep. It's terrible. We console him, but nobody cares. Forest Dragon.
It is a dragon.
It's dragon. Like I feel like
no armor for a dragon.
Yeah, but I just make up with physical resistance. Yay.
And has magic damage and poison.
And poison, yeah. So typically, I don't actually see forest dragons. I do see forest dragons, but I don't. Meaning, I don't see the unit forest dragon. I usually just see the sisters on a dragon.
Yeah.
That's usually the situation you're bringing. Or the Glade, yeah. That's the only real situations you're seeing forest dragons. You don't typically see them just on their own. But it's nice.
So
it's a dragon. Breath attack.
Of Vanuth says, so a third of the roster, elites in brackets, are too squishy.
Yeah.
A third are a weird mishmash of tanky and out-of-place units, monsters, and the other third is just units you care about, which is the cav, skirmishers, and infantry.
And the infantry that sits there
Replace
to...
infantry with basic infantry, and then we
Yeah, the basic, yeah, it's pretty much, that is it. And it's sad because they got some tools in the DLC, but none of them really affected the style of play. I think the only unit that you see like a lot is like the Lost Silver Knights. And that's it.
Yeah.
Everything else that was added in the
Because
DLC.
they're ethereal.
Yeah, because they just they suit
armor
in with
piercing.
the skirmish roster quite nicely as well. Because that's the Wood Elf build, is skirmish.
So you
It
see
always
the
has been.
rule there, every DLC Skavener in, they get absolutely the greatest tool you could ever wish
Tanked
for.
up.
But
What
every
else?
other factions just get basically glorified.
Yeah, they get some ghost reindeers and a Drycher. That's it.
You should all go to CA's website and demand a Skaven versus Skaven DLC, because that DLC is it's
For
gonna be
everyone.
amazing.
No, we definitely want Vampire Coast versus
No, we
Vampire
do not.
Coast. Would you ever see that?
No.
I'd never see Vampire Coast
Chaos.
versus anything. No, you're getting a full
Chaos.
game. You're not getting DLC. You're getting full game 3. It's fine.
Okay, anyway.
Yeah, that's it. That is it for the roster. Yeah, what else bad? Empire, pretty good. Wood Elf
Wood Elf's
skirmish,
good,
Empire
Empire,
do anything they want. Well, that is it. That is enough beating down on the Wood Elves for now. Next week we'll be beating down on people playing the Wood Elves. A different change of pace. It's probably going to be Ted. Oh, Ted's going to have to play. No, he's the only. Oh no, I already know. Ted's just going to submit like 10 mid and land replays. Okay.
If you have any replays, send them to us. We can also make sure
Well,
that
they could
Wood-
probably just send them at
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
Because
send them to
I'm
Psycho.
organizing them.
Yeah, because
Send
and
them to
then he
Psycho
can
and Psycho
forward
can
them to
organize
me.
them. And we're gonna punch Widow at some point if he.
Yeah, but
as
if-
soon as the quarantine is over and I can actually fly over to Great Britain, I'm gonna be sitting next
Punch
to Widow
and
and
just
punching him.
smash the
Whatever.
bottle against my head.
I woke up too late. I couldn't do my Empire General bit.
Oh no, maybe whenever
what
we
did you-
cover. It's fine. Anyway, we're going to
You
stop
can-
recording
you
now.
can replay.
Thank you all for watching.
Oh, yeah. Wait,
Bye.
are we watching?